a little bit sidetracked. Indiana, they have castle doctrine. You can't just shoot somebody for walking on your land. It's against the law.
Not in Indiana.
Yes, in Indiana. Like,
no, if you've got the
motherfucker, I have a
signage up, if
degree in this
someone is
shit.
The distinction is one is voluntary and one is involuntary.
Both of them, no, they're the same level of voluntary or involuntary.
PrimeCayes, if they were the same level of voluntary, then why would people need to write a bill to make it illegal for corporations to be able to have right to work? It's obviously not voluntary because you're trying to make it illegal for voluntary things to occur.
All right, so let's get started. We have one more person who will be showing up here soon, hopefully, but we'll get started now. Thank you all for being here. This is the Reverie Roundtable, which we have Mondays 8 p.m. Eastern. We have a fantastic group of guys here. If you're watching this on YouTube later on, please like, comment, and subscribe. It's a big help to the channel. Much appreciated. We are going to start by introducing all these great individuals with Fanatic, thank you for being here once again. How are you?
I'm blessed, loving life. I was looking into proposal recently, and the idiot jeweler decided to go ahead and call me while I was in the car with my girl. It pissed me off pretty bad. So I've decided, she ain't getting no ring now. No, I'm looking for an excuse for that one, huh? No, but I'm good. I'm excited for these topics today. I think it'll be pretty nice.
But did she know you were going to propose to her?
I mean, I feel like she knows for sure, because it's not like it's like a complete 100% in the dark thing. It never is. There's always like a kind of an idea that it's like we're getting to that point. But like you literally got one job. Why the freak would you call and just instantly say who you are and what company you come from? So yeah, that's a dumb thing to do. It's just.
Have you asked her what her ring size was? Have you asked?
Of course.
Yeah, okay, yeah, there's a high probability she's got an idea.
Yeah, there's no way, because there's no way you can't get that information without having like had those discussions. So, because if you can't, so there was just no way. There was no way we were going to be able to.
You could just
them being asleep is a great thing.
Tape measure, exactly. Yeah, tape measure on their fingers. But now I'm really curious. Does your did you put this on speakerphone? And
yeah, I was in my car.
Okay, so you put it on speakerphone.
And I didn't recognize the number.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hello? And they're just like, hey, it's so-and-so from so-and-so. And I was just like, oh. And then my sister and my girlfriend were in my car, and then they just
Is my watch in yet?
Started laughing. Yeah, I should have been. But I don't think she knows. I don't believe in watches. I don't believe in jewelry at all. Like, as you see, I have none, and I think it's all stupid. And so she would have known regardless, but there's no way around it. What can you do?
Okay. Well, I'm happy. And okay, one more question. How long have you been dating?
We've been dating for 9.5 months, but I've known her since I was like 2 years old.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm happy things are going so well for you. You mentioned, I feel like every stream you mention her at least once, right? Like
you're probably right.
Yeah. Hey, I'm happy to see you happy. All right. Like, she puts a smile on your face. So that's fantastic. All right.
Yeah.
Scott, friend Scott, who has known love and lost love. My friend Scott. Thank you for. What?
I'm just imagining Fanatic like in the bedroom late at night trying to tape measure a finger, right, to get a ring size secretly, and her just waking up and being like, will you marry me? You know what I mean? Like, how are you supposed to get that information? Especially when you're trying to figure out what type of cut she wants and shit like that. Like, and you're asking her friends, and her friends aren't keeping their fucking mouth shut. They're like, girl, he's about to propose. Like, it's just, they know. Yeah. They always know. And if they pretend not to know, good on them. But we know that you know. I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty, anarcho-capitalist duo stream. You can check us out, Fabian Liberty, everywhere. And it's fun to be here.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much. Our friend Lactoid is back. We've missed him. We missed you a lot, Lactoid. I love the
Canadian.
He was with his handlers in Toronto, Maybe visiting his his Montreal mistress. I don't know. But our friend Lactoid is back. Lactoid, would you marry an American, or is that like against agency protocol?
For a citizen, I mean, no, yeah, of course I would. I don't know. No, thank you so much, Prime, for having me on. Sorry I couldn't make it before. I know it's been a little bit, but really, really appreciate it. Everybody, you can find me on Anti-Communism United, one word, on Discord, Twitch, and now Twitter as well. I am Lactoid, and I hope to crush some lefties tonight.
The anti-communist stuff is just a cover, right? He's a good Canadian, so he believes in socialized medicine, all those things, right? But like, you'll never expect him if he like surrounds himself in like libertarian arguments. So good work, right? Like, they still haven't caught on to you, all right? So let's move on to.
Stop blowing my cover, Jesus.
Let's move on to Aiko. Aiko, are you married, Aiko?
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I have a
have you?
girlfriend. She's in Louisiana. So
Okay.
we both kind of. I go there sometimes. She comes here sometimes.
So Louisiana?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow! All right.
Yeah,
okay.
right next door to Texas. It's not that far.
Sure.
little bit of a
Well
distance.
then, that's fantastic. I'm glad. Well, I hope things are going well between the two of you.
Thanks.
I'm
Yeah.
going to ask everyone a relationship question now. All right, like it's already
Louisiana,
set.
where the food is better and the people are worse.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Aiko. If you want to say anything else about yourself other than your love life.
Well, I'm not. No. I mean, I don't stream yet, so I don't really have anything to plug. I might stream it probably in a month or two. I keep saying that. Maybe I should start actually making that happen. But when I do, it'll be at iCow Rich, so you can just follow that if you want to. And when I start streaming, you'll see. But I haven't really started yet.
Okay.
School year started, so I had a lot of prep. Once that prep is like, it takes about 6 weeks to prep for a new school year, and then after that, it's closer to being on cruise control, and I do some more
Okay.
stuff here.
Thank you so much. All right, next we have Genevieve. Genevieve back with us after quite a while. It's been a few months since we've seen Genevieve. In that time, Genevieve, has your partner proposed to you? It's very important.
No. Well, I mean, I guess it's a little tricky because I do say that we're engaged because we do plan on getting married and spending our future together. So in my mind, that's essentially engaged would be the best word for that. But we've not had like your big Hollywood moment where I would be like super surprised by like a ring of some sort, because it's something we've discussed and we know that we're on the same page of it.
Okay, so he knows your ring size already and the cut you want?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been together for a really long time, so he's bought me a lot of jewelry. It's not like an engagement ring is going to be the first piece of jewelry that he bought me. He knows my ring size, my shoe size, my clothing sizes, all of my preferences. He's really good on that.
She keeps putting little notes in his pockets. That way, when he does his laundry, he'll see the note like, oh, she wears this size ring.
Well, here's a good tip. Like, if you have access to like your girl's closet or like jewelry, like take a look at what she's got already there. Like your iPhone can do that measure feature, or like
Or you
tell her
could
you're
steal
taking
one
get
and
it
take it to the,
cleaned and then take
yeah.
it to the the jeweler or whatever. And that works for like other gifts too. Look at her shoe size, look at her dress size, look at her bra size, all of those things, so that you can buy better presents. And for women, buying for men and everyone in between.
Not a nice, yeah, that makes sense, right? Bra
Yeah,
size is
that's
the
my
first thing I
trick.
find
When
out.
I buy gifts for people, I try to see what they might
When you buy gifts for
what
people, you like
sizes
to
they
raid their
might
panty drawers.
yeah, I mean, amongst other things.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for letting us into your life because I intruded on it. Next, we
No
got
problem at all.
Sprouticus. Sprouticus is also back with us. Happy to have him here. True American, right? You come used to the flag of background, obviously. True American. So let's.
And a
Sprouticus.
bonus, it's not one that needs to be retired. Okay. Unlike some other people on this panel. So I am the Sprouticus. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at the Sprouticus. No spaces. I'm excited for today's debate. I like the topics. I like the people they're on. It's gonna make for a good talking. So I'm excited for it and ready to get into it.
Sprouticus, so you are married, correct?
I am married. I've been married for 4 years, going on 5.
Oh, that's amazing. And going well. I mean, I guess if it wasn't, you wouldn't tell people in public. But
Well, I mean, like I've got my lawyer's number on speed dial, but right now it's going okay.
Well, yeah, we're very happy for you. All right, yeah, we got a lot of people in love here. I love to see it. We have GSU Gambit, who has a beautiful girlfriend. I've never seen her, but I'm assuming GSU would only surround himself with beautiful women. So, GSU, thanks for being here. Yeah, and tell us about your girlfriend. Like, how long you been together?
Hold on, wait. Am I on mute? Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've been together for a minute. Things are really, really different. I don't really talk much about that on stream, but yeah, no, things are absolutely amazing.
Okay, all right, which means the ring is incoming, right? Like it's already on the way. Maybe?
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
GSU is always careful about what he says.
Yo, his girl's watching the stream right now. Like his girl's watching the stream right now. Like, How long? How long you waiting, motherfucker?
GSU is always careful about what he says because of the vents in his house. So he doesn't want her to hear anything. So notice how he answered that question. He goes, yes, right? Without like repeating anything that I said. I'm just putting that out there.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Thanks so much, GSU Gambit. And finally, last but not least, we have our friend Isle of Isles, who's back with us. Isle, all right, your relationship status. Where are you? How are you doing?
Me?
Yeah.
You know, I'm
Yeah,
just
you.
married to the grind side at the moment. But that's pretty much it.
All right.
But I'm doing fine today.
Okay. All right, we'll take it. All right. Thanks so much. Let's.
We're not skipping you. Go ahead. Let us in. We want to know.
Prime is of the streets. All right. Prime is keeping his options wide open. Prime has met some very beautiful girls who make Prime feel very good. And is
wide open nightly, right? Every night's a new opening, right?
Yeah,
Start booking that schedule.
Oh God, I wish. I wish. I'm not like that. But Prime is working on it. Any which way. If you want to help Prime go out on dates, sub to the channel. Give subs. So maybe it can be every night. We'll see that. All right, let's continue. That was awkward.
I think it made it awkward because you were talking in third person. I think if you were talking like first person about it, it would be a lot less awkward.
They make it weirder.
Swipe right on the
Third
stream.
person always
and
makes
give
things
subs.
weirder.
I didn't have an answer prepared. I actually really wasn't thinking about it. I was hoping that no one like GSU Gambit would pressure me.
Look,
and
next
say,
time,
You
just
thought you
next
could
time,
put everyone else on the
next-
spot and then not have to be accountable
next time,
yourself.
just lean into it. Don't say Prime. Just say Daddy the entire time. Like Daddy keeps his schedule open. Daddy does that. You know, like just really lean into it and just fucking commit. Don't this halfway shit about talking about yourself as Prime is not working. Just go full force.
I will take that criticism. GSU Gambit, thank you for being so kind as to gift a sub. 310 subs total. To Edgelord, hey, that's really kind of you. Thank you, GSU, for supporting the community.
Sometimes it takes a minute for me to realize that I'm the funniest person
for the date.
panels.
He did it for the date. Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's get started. I might be hearing some background noise from someone. I'm not sure, but we'll work it out. Topic 1. No, that's Fnatic.
Just
That's
saying.
you.
I
I
People
got
are
you.
so
As soon as you
unfunny
said it, I
sometimes,
realized
like-
I think I have my setting.
Okay, no problem. He fell out of the call. All right. Okay. Topic
Should be
one.
fixed.
All right. Elizabeth Warren has introduced a bill that would ban right-to-work laws. Right-to-work laws prohibit unions from collecting dues from non-union members who are still covered under a union contract. Do you think these anti-union laws are just? Should people who have chosen not to be in a union be forced to support it? Should it be more? Would it be more just if the laws instead gave workers the option to individually bargain in a union shop? Yeah. So this was a little while ago. Elizabeth Warren made or put out this bill, and it doesn't seem to have a lot of support because, of course, not. But yeah, the right to work laws have been with us for many decades, and have had a significant effect on union memberships, right? Nationally. So, what do you think of those laws? So we'll start with our man Fanatic.
The first time I ever came into contact with the phrase right to work laws was with Florida, which is right to work state. But the right to work, like calling it a right to work state, really just means it's a shield. It typically is used as a shield against employers from having to be responsible or do the right thing. So they can say, well, we're not forcing you into these conditions. You have a right to work here. We're not forcing you to work here. So if we screw you over, then that's totally fine. So I've always not been very fond of the phrase right to work. I feel like it's a misnomer. It's like misleading. But all that, I think the idea of someone like refusing to participate in the union, but reaping all of the benefits of the union, because the unions have been incredibly powerful or useful in this country, as far as, creating some of the things that we all consider normal, like, the 4-hour work week and things like that. I mean, 40-hour work week and 8-hour work days and all those kinds of things. That stuff comes from unions. And so it's like to just kind of dismiss that and just be like, nah, I just don't like it. I won't be part of it. I don't know. It feels kind of selfish. So I don't know. I'm all for, forcing people in those situations.
Thank you so much. Scott, please.
Yeah, so I think unions obviously have a sordid history. Like in some ways they did exactly what Fanatic said, right? The Wildcat protests and unions working together and fighting against the state gave us a lot of, power back as people against the government and state working with corporations in a fascistic way. Obviously, unions have also done a lot of terrible things. And, they have, sorry, I'm sorry about the interruptions. So, they've done a lot of things economically. I would say unions are probably more harm than they are good, both to the American consumer, to businesses, and to employees. But that being said, if you want to join a union, you should be able to join a union, right? Like if you have a certain skill set, like as a welder or something, and you want to band with other people so that you have collective bargaining, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. There's no rights violation there. However, curtailing the rights of businesses to be able to fire people and force individuals into unions that they don't want to be a part of is absolutely a rights violation. I think Thomas Jefferson said it best. Obviously, he was talking about monarchy when he said to compel a man to furnish contributions for the propagation of opinions which he disbelieves is sinful and tyrannical. And that's exactly what forcing people to join a union and forcing people to pay union dues is. I mean, unions give $50 million a year towards lobbying campaigns for politicians from those union dues. And so to anyone that supports forcing people into these things, right, from a left-wing perspective, I would simply ask one question. If the shoe were on the other foot and everywhere you went to work, there was a union that forced you to give money to the worst Republican candidates that you didn't like, and you weren't allowed to not give money to those Republicans, and you knew that working at that job specifically forced some of your earnings to go towards political candidates that disagreed with you deeply, like how would you feel about that? Would you feel maybe I would prefer to not give my money to these politicians? I think the answer, if you're being honest, is yes. And that's the situation many Americans are in, apart from the free rider problem. But I think it should be an interesting conversation.
Thank you so much. Lactoid, please.
Yeah, so 1 second. All right, so as I'm sure everyone here is pretty shocked to hear, I'm against Warren's proposal entirely. There's nothing wrong in principle with people consensually agreeing to form a union. However, forcing people into associations that they don't consent to is wrong in of itself, and forcing people to pay for unions that they don't support is especially wrong for many other reasons. There is evidence to suggest that an increase of union membership is associated with a decline in state real GDP growth rate, job growth rate, average weekly earnings growth rate for non-unionized workers, and a total wage earnings growth rate reduction. It's no surprise that the right to work states in America have had an explosion in growth and industries escaping places like New York and California. Further, there is a real concern that forced union dues infringe upon people's free speech. Just recently, we had a Supreme Court case on this, Janus versus AFS-CME. In that case, the court rightfully determined that there is something unfair and in the public setting unconstitutional in forcing someone to contribute to what is essentially a political fund that sends money to Democratic candidates, especially when those Democratic candidates support things that individual union members very well may not. In Janus's case in particular, he was an avid gun supporter, and he was upset that he was being forced to pay dues that were very actively going to be used as public or as political contributions to those very people trying to take his gun rights away. That's what led to that case. I think it's a clear example of why right to work is a good idea, and why I think Warren is just simply trying to grow her own political donor base.
Okay, thank you so much, Aiko.
Okay, so when I first saw this topic, there's just this comes up on debate tournaments at least once a year. So I come across this topic a lot, and I also sort of grew up in a time. Like I'm older than everyone else in the panel, so you might not remember these times, but there was a time when unions were very powerful, and when they were powerful, there were several reasons why they became very. One of them was, probably a lot of people do know, that there were a lot of mafia connections. Everyone knows the Jimmy Hoffa story. And when I was growing up, you've got to understand the reason why unions had declined the way that they have over the past several decades has to do with the rise of neoliberalism. Starting with Clinton, you had a reduced support of unions in the Democratic Party. That's only just now shifting in the other direction. But the reason why that was the case was because there were so many abuses by the unions that were very well publicized. Like one example is when I was growing up, I remember reading about these firefighters that were on strike. I can't remember what city it was in, but they were on strike, and they didn't just go on strike and like not answer calls, but they actually would drive out to the houses that were burning down, and they would bring coolers of beer, and they would sit on lawn chairs and like cheer on the house, being burned down, like in front of the families that were losing their house. And it was the mentality of all of that sort of struck Americans really hard. And so for the longest time, there was this sort of backlash against unions, especially, among Republicans who were sort of reacting to all of the power that they had because they were a big base of power in the Democratic Party at the time. The reason Clinton started moving away from all that was because of those negative perceptions. And once both parties were generally anti-union, it became very difficult to support the power base that they had, which peaked probably in the 60s and 70s. And a couple of other examples. I've got a friend of mine who was a
Not
manager.
too many examples because there's intros.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll add more examples as we go. But let me just say that in the school districts, it's the same thing. We have a lot of teachers unions who are very focused on not holding teachers accountable for their job, things like that. So a lot of it depends on, I've come around to the idea of unions being important for reasons I'll go into later. But I just wanted everyone to sort of understand that there's a reason why unions have sort of fallen out of favor historically.
Thank you so much. Genevieve.
Thanks, Prime. overall, I would say that our existing right to work laws are extremely outdated. The history of them is super controversial if we look at some of the original supporters of these back in, like around the 40s.
Guild by association.
Are in line with supporters of segregation and generally look to make it more difficult for people who are disenfranchised to make equal wages. The data kind of disproves the argument that these right to work laws are going to create all of these jobs in a more create a better environment for workers to have more choices, et cetera, et cetera. They actually, in states that have the right to work laws, we see that the average worker makes less money and has fewer benefits. We also see that the companies that move into kind of take advantage of this opportunity in a right to work state are probably going to be a company that looks to pay their employees less and provide fewer benefits, et cetera, which also takes advantage of disenfranchised groups. I do think that there's probably opportunity to maybe come up with some new replacement regulation around the way that we do deal with unions, but I think that our current situation is completely outdated and really should be done away with.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Sprouticus.
Hey, Florida Trailer Man. You interrupted a brain dead take anyways.
Right to work laws.
I appreciate it.
While maybe the people who created them had good intentions, I don't think it's doing what they think it's doing. There's a study by the American Journal of Sociology that points out that right to work laws lead to greater economic inequality by indirectly reducing the power of labor unions. Following up with that, I've heard several times that the unions are just donating to Democratic candidates and et cetera and so on, or candidates that you don't particularly believe in, et cetera and so on. There was a Supreme Court case in 1988 decision, Communication Workers of America versus Beck, that required unions to separate collective representation costs from other activities. So no, dues are not going towards payments to Democratic candidates or any candidates of that matter of fact, because it has to be separated. No, it's not happening. And last but not least, the right to work laws that I want is get rid of at-will employment. At-will employment is the number one killer of employees' ability to work, or the ability to retain employees, is at-will employment, where a boss can literally pretty much fire you for anything. You wore the wrong color shoes, get the fuck out of my office, you're done here. So no, the real right to work laws need to be the absolute abolition of at-will employment.
Thank you so much. GSU Gambit.
Yeah, I don't think this is surprising to anyone. Rarely are Republicans right when they say that Democrats are trying to destroy the world. But I think this is like the best example. I'm very much, in favor of what unions have done in the past, and like several people have mentioned, there's been lots of progress made for workers' rights by unions. But when it comes to what I think are like specialized fields or highly skilled fields, I don't think there's anyone best to negotiate anything with my employment outside of me. I have no faith in anyone else that could achieve the things that I've achieved. So I feel like a lot of time when people join unions, they have to fall like in lockstep with whatever that union's policies are. Like me, I'm like, yo, I don't want to get up for it. And my employer is like, oh, we need you to get up at 9 o'clock. And I'm like, yo, well, I'm not doing it. And because I get to advocate for myself, I'm able to be, a little bit more aggressive than I would be if I was a part of some cult that was trying to fight for my rights. So I think advocating for myself has turned out wonderfully. I think in highly skilled fields, it's the thing to go. Like maybe there is a place for this in like different job markets, but when it comes to technology, it's absolutely stupid. A lot of people have said like, unions are great still, and like I think me and Aiko have like argued this before almost, but I think if unions were what people express that they are, we wouldn't be having to trick people into putting their signature on paper so that they can advocate for them. So I think things like the teachers union, the police union, people generally want to join. And it seems like in other areas people don't. And I think people should have choice. I think taking away choice is bad.
I was happy that you made it here, Rechi, because we've had very long conversations on this very subject before, so I very well know your position on it. So yeah, I'm very happy that you're here. Thank you so much. Let's go to our friend Isle.
Okay. So, extol the virtues of the union. When people are able to get together and bring their voices as one, people can do many impressive things. And I think that unions do have a place in our society, and they should have a good role in our communities moving forward. However, I do think that superseding that is people's individual choice to join or not join the union. I don't think that people should be paying for something that they don't want to be a part of. So if you don't want to be in a union, you shouldn't have to pay for it. But I would also look at you very lowly if you were trying to be a hanger on and taking the stuff that the union's providing when you're not a union member. I think that that's a little bit opportunistic of you, and I think you should stop that. But other than that, I think that you shouldn't have to pay for something that you're not a part of, because there's no collective we to pitch into if you're not going to be part of that we. So
All right, open to the panel.
Bro, there's no way you believe what you said. There's no way.
There's no way I believe
You
what I
said
said. Go ahead.
You said just because they in some way keep money separate, that means that you're not donating. Like effectively, if I offset some of your costs to pay for your bills, you can spend your money on other things. So absolutely, if you're giving to these organizations, whether it's a roundabout way and indirectly, you're supporting the candidates that they support. Absolutely. You agree with that, right?
So at that point, you would be supporting via proxy. But what I'm also stating, what I'm also stating is that the benefits that brings, even though you could consider it donating via proxy, is that the benefit that actually brings to the workers. Labor unions are for the lower class, right? This is causing a greater division between how much you make.
Again, whether or not you think unions are good, you were saying that, hey, because of this law, they have to keep the money separate. But I just want to point out, like, if I pay your rent,
right? If you pay my house bill, then I'm going to have that much money to spend somewhere else. Yes,
exactly.
Well, hold on. It's more than that, though. So you're partially right. There was a case that decided to keep it separate, but in the more recent Janus decision, what they realized and what the court openly acknowledged is that the level of keeping it separate was essentially an illusion, right? The unions were using illusionary tactics to keep these funds separate. Specifically, Janus went to a convention that was being run with the funds that are not earmarked for political conventions, and this or for any kind of political events. And this convention was actively supporting Democratic candidates, and that was with the money that wasn't even supposed to be going to political contributions. And that was the case.
It's not
right?
illegal. It's not illegal to use it on political activities. That it's just illegal to use it specifically on lobby. And so what they do is they host political events, dinners, luncheons. They take people out and they say, "Oh, this isn't lobbying," and then they do a fundraiser with a bunch of other Democratic. They'll spend money. They'll spend money on quote unquote political activities that they're allowed to do, and use that as a fundraiser for PACs. I'm not wrong. Like.
It's literally
what
right.
Are you talking
Section 8A3 does not permit a union, over the objections of dues-paying non-member employees, to expend funds collected from them on activities unrelated to collective bargaining activities.
You're not allowed to use
U.S. Code 74-762.
You're not allowed to use collective bargaining or any political activities from non-union members' union dues. Okay, so that would be places where they're like let's say New York or something, right? Where you don't join the union, but in a right to work state, you don't join the union, right? So you're protected from that in right to work places. But in places that aren't right to work, it's a little different because you have to be a union member. But in a place where
Even
you don't
if you're
have
not,
to
wait,
be
no. If you're not right to work, then you don't have to pay. You don't have to be a union member. In
That's
a
what I'm
right to work
saying.
state, you don't have to pay. In a non-right
you're
to work,
biting without
wait,
listening.
in a
Listen.
non-right to work state, you don't have to be a member, but you still have to pay.
Stop yipping and just listen, right?
I don't know
what
how
I'm
you don't
saying
understand
is
that concept.
I understand the concept. You're just not listening.
Then
So what
utilize
I'm
the
sa-
concept.
Jesus Christ, child. Anyways, what I'm saying is that when you're in a right to work state, right? And you are quote unquote part of the free rider problem. You're someone that's not a union member, right? But you are, and you're not paying dues. You're fine. If you're not in a right to work state, right? Some of those places require you to be in a union. Some places don't require you to be in a union. In those places where you're not required to be in the union, but you still have to pay union dues, your fees are separated by this law completely, right? So if you are someone that pays union dues, but you're not actually a part of the union, you're not like voting in the union, you're not participating, you're just paying the paycheck, right? Those funds cannot be used for any political activities. Now,
Can you point out
unions
anywhere
are
where-
allowed. Unions are
Anywhere where a
allowed.
company where a company, not a public sector, a company requires the employee to be in the union. That's a requirement of the job. Can you point that out anywhere?
Well, I mean, I'm from Virginia, so all my personal experiences would be in the wonderfulness of right to work states. But I'll find the states for you.
I do remember that when
there are states like that. I mean, I can find the exact ones.
Go ahead.
I do remember when Toyota came in, they actually wanted to be a union shop, and they said, look, because that's what they're used to globally. And they said, look, we'll set up a union shop here, because they were setting up in one of the states in the South. I can't remember which state it was. The state actually said, no, you can't require people to be in the union. Even if you as a corporation want to, you still can't because of right to work. So, I mean, there are states where that is required. That just happened to not be one of them. But in Detroit and other sort of traditional union areas, there are places. The choice really is.
I'm asking for the example, right?
So here's my.
So now you want a specific company in a specific state that's that way? Is that what you're asking?
Any example where you are required to be in the union, not pay union dues. You can not be in a union and pay union dues. Where you're required to join the union.
What do you mean? Like, so you're saying where you're okay? So you want the specific state where you're required to join the union, not the ones where you're required to pay
any example
union
of where
dues.
you're required to join the union.
Question.
Yes,
Okay,
that's not a different question. That's what I've been saying the whole time.
Fanatic.
All right, so I just want to point out like a few things. Number one, 96% of union workers have employer-provided health insurance, but only 69% of non-union workers do. On average, union workers' wages are 11.2% higher than their non-union counterparts. In California, union workers earn an average of 12.9% more than their non-union counterparts. Even if we control for the industry, even if we control for similar working, similar fields. Or just similar conditions or whatever. They tend to be paid more because of collective bargaining.
No, that's because there are vastly more jobs, and there's things like part-time work, and those things aren't unionized. So those people, on average, are going to make less.
Wait,
the lowest class of work is going to be things.
They said they controlled for characteristics.
I don't think there's a way to.
Wait, what do you mean? Wait. Are you telling me right now that we couldn't do a study where we only included full-time employees? What do you mean? What do you mean they couldn't?
What I'm saying is that I think the vast majority of part-time jobs are non-unionized. So any study that's trying to extrapolate from the average between those is wild. It's like,
right, but if you're controlling for if you're controlling for specifically for industries, controlling for the same for the same demographic characteristics and similar industry, if you're controlling for all of those things, right, then that means I don't know. Can you find me a study right now, because I mean this is I really feel like this is common knowledge. I think we all know that unionized workers tend to earn non-union or whatever. But if you think that this study is missing something, right, then go ahead and find me any study that does control for the things that you're talking about. Indicates
in the study, I want to ask you a simple question. Did your study list the number of part-time versus non-part-time union workers? Because my argument is, if you take 100 workers and 90 of them are non-unionized and 10 of them are unionized, and you say that the average of these 10 people is higher than the average of the other 90, then what you've just done is statistics to prove the point that you wanted to see. That's all I'm saying. So if your study lists the numbers, so that it's like when people argue about co-ops, it's like 1% of the fucking world, right? Like, don't give me an argument about something New York that's a small
contracts
subset.
on unions.
So if you do have a study, please send it to me. But if it includes the amount that's in those demographics, that will help the conversation. Because if it's relatively the same, I think it's a big argument.
I'll just repeat myself, and at that point we can move on. Again, what I'm saying is what we all understand to be pretty intuitive. We all know that that unions play. That I'm pretty sure we've all known that unions have paid more than their non-union counterparts for God knows how long. So since we all know this, I don't feel like I need to do any extra step to prove anything. If you are arguing to the contrary, that instead that unions are not paying more, then in that
That's
case,
not what I'm
I would
arguing.
need. So good. So then, if you're not arguing that unions aren't paying more,
I'm arguing that it's an irrelevant stat. That's what I'm arguing.
Okay, so then what? Okay, so then we all know, right? Like, I listed the statistics. He's trying to say that they're like that they didn't control for something. I'm not willing to indulge
I'm
that.
asking
What
you
I,
did
I
that.
got you. I'm not willing to indulge that. What I am saying instead is, since this is something that we all know, that it seems like it's a pretty beneficial thing. We already all knew it, and I think any study you can find would suggest that. If
There
you're
we go.
saying that that's not true,
Sorry, I had to put all the
studies are
union
just not
contracts
good,
from New York City
ridiculous,
in
then I would
in the
encourage you to
fucking
find
chat.
me a single study that says the thing
Can
that
I ask you
you're
a question?
claiming. Then I'm saying I don't want you to ask me another question, because I've already made my point 3 times now, and you're not going to address it a single time. So I'll just say it for the final time. So what I'm saying is, if you're one of those people that tends to believe that what I'm saying is incorrect, then I would ask you to find me a single study that supports what you're talking about. I don't even feel like I need to find a study to support what we already know intuitively is the truth, that unions do pay better wages to the people
Yeah.
who are.
Okay. Can I just say that?
Wait. No, I'm responding to that. All right. So, Fanatic, I showed you financial data that said that co-ops on average, make more money than people who are not a part of co-ops. Would you be ready to make the entire world co-ops? Because there's statistical data that shows that this small niche community of people may be paid on average better than people that are not in that community, similar to the same thing that you're presenting with union workers. Would you say that data, though it's like vastly small, is good enough to make the argument that just because the statistics are on its side, it's a valid argument?
Yeah, no, but I'm not entertaining it. That's stupid. I'm not.
So
okay.
maybe
I don't
maybe
I don't want to go back and forth with you any further.
Maybe it
I
wasn't.
made my point.
Maybe Fanatic wasn't like powerfully communicating it enough in the beginning, but like study over study over study shows that when you isolate variables, right, compare the same job to the same job, that union workers make 11.2%, roughly 11%, sometimes 10% more than non-union workers. And like was pointed out earlier, 96% of them have healthcare as opposed to 66. Even in the same job, I think it's like 70 something versus like 98, right? So without a doubt, it is true that individuals that work in unions in that moment in time, when compared to other people that they're working with, make more money, a little bit more money, and they only have to pay 1 to 2% of their money on union dues, right? The average union due membership is $400 per year. And so you would say, well, that's a pretty good deal, right? But that's not really the argument economically about unions in general. The argument is to look at historically, to the best of our ability, what happens when you have large amounts of unionship, right? And you could look at Japan versus America. You can look at sugar tariffs. You can look at a lot of different historical examples. And what ends up happening when you have large union and you have this large amount of collective bargaining is you have something known as cost disease, right? Which is, even though the productivity of the labor isn't increasing because inflation is increasing or because other businesses are hiring people more because the value of that labor is increasing, people demand higher wages without that increase to productivity. And when that happens, they're not capable of competing in a global market with other places that are. And so what you do is you speed the decline of massive loss of jobs, you speed the decline of lower wages over time, and you speed the decline of well, I guess those would be the two major things, right? And so you start to create an effect where this collective bargaining for the sake of that bargaining, especially when you force it and you force higher wages without an increase in productivity, makes the business less competitive, makes prices higher for the consumer, and then people stop buying American cars, they start buying Japanese cars, even though Japanese was only making 1% of the cars, and all of a sudden they were producing 2/3 of the cars in America.
Are you sure that had
Well,
to do with the fact that Japanese cars were significantly more efficient?
Sorry, after this, I do want to
ask him a
let
small question. I just want to ask Fabian a small question.
ask quick small question. Now, what do you want to let Aiko in? Go ahead.
Yeah, Fabian, can you produce a study on the healthcare plan thing? And does it outline like part-time work versus full-time and all of that? The question that I've been asked. So you said that on average, union workers have healthcare plans more, which of course is going to be true. But can you provide the study that breaks down how they're coming up with that? And are they accounting for part-time versus full-time work?
I mean, if you want me to find a study for that,
No,
you could.
I'm just asking.
I don't have it immediately available, but like, it's pretty.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty common knowledge, unfortunately, right?
I'm not saying that it's not common knowledge.
If you remember the 2012 campaign, right?
Wait, Fabian, hold on. Wait, what do you think?
No, wait.
I'm asking you, is the stat true?
Listen.
I'm asking about the veracity of the stat. Go ahead.
Right. What I'm saying is, if you remember, like the 2012 campaign, right? Or when they were kind of like looking at healthcare a lot, right? There was this big discussion of Cadillac health insurance plans, right? And the thing is that unions are actually infamous, right, for bargaining for much, much better health insurance plans than what the average worker has just in general. And they're known, like AFL-CIO, Teamsters, a lot of these big unions, they bargain for what's known as Cadillac health insurance plans, which are like really expensive, really good health insurance. Like I can go find one for you, but it is like common political knowledge that union workers tend to have better rates of health insurance.
I accept that. I never said I didn't accept that. I
didn't say that you didn't.
Okay, but you went on this ramble addressing my question with that, which isn't anything that I actually. But no, go on.
I was still waiting.
No, sorry. No, we got to get to Aiko, and then Spartacus. If you want to go afterwards.
Okay.
Okay, so the moment's passed on what I was going to say, but I'll just say it really fast. Like, Fanatic's point, I think, is the common sense position. So, burden of proof really, I think, is on GSU to say otherwise. Because the fact is, if it sort of beggars belief to think that unions would negotiate, like, worse conditions or worse pay. They always negotiate better conditions, better pay, right? So that's the common sense that says that, yeah, of course, union workers are going to have like better conditions and better and better pay, even if we didn't have the studies that we have in front of us. But on this electoral, since it was brought up that there was this sort of point of contention between unions and Obama in 2012 election over Cadillac plans and how Obamacare was going to sort of take away some of their like hard-earned gains. That was the beginning of, that really was towards the end of the cracks that were forming with regards to unions supporting the Democratic Party. And what happened, the result of all of that was that in 2016, like Trump said to union workers, hey, Democrats have abandoned you. They've really abandoned you since Clinton in the early 90s started moving away from unions. Vote for me instead. And I think what the Democratic Party has found is that all of this is one of the reasons why I just talked about all the issues I had with unions sort of growing up. One of the reasons I had to turn around on that was because in the 2016 election, you saw what happened when union power abated. What happened was you started having arguments from the right saying you had got all of these promises from the Democrats over the decades, but what have you gotten in the last 20 years, 25 years, this sort of reduction in power? And that was something that the Republicans have never thought to make that argument before. Trump was the first one to make it. And it won him the Rust Belt. And the Rust Belt was still very close in the 2020 election, despite the fact that Biden did everything he could to sort of appeal to those workers and sort of win them back. And in his most recent political speech, Biden said he wants to be the most pro-labor president in history. So they're starting to now see the mistake that they've made in distancing themselves from unions. And now they're starting to sort of reestablish those relationships and hopefully like get that stuff going forward. And that's where the political side of this all goes, because union workers themselves are a swing voter constituency that can determine the next few presidential elections.
Bro, I think this
Alright.
is complete. This is a complete.
This is
reach.
look. I go. Sorry, I'm sorry. Let's Spartacus go because he's been waiting. But then Fanatic, we can go back to you.
All right, I'm still waiting on the sources in which you can be forced to join a union. I'm still waiting on those sources. Do you have anything yet, Scott?
Yeah,
Anything?
I put in the chat just so that you can see union contracts by the state.
Let's see.
Right, where the state requires all
The
of these
state
unions
union
to follow.
contracts.
Well, I can add some
New York
clarity.
State?
This is relevant to like recent. Supreme
That's
Court.
public. That's all public. Okay, I
Hold on,
said
yeah,
private.
Right, Sprout. So prior
Janitors, like
prior to the Janus versus AFS CME case,
it's
Illinois
2018.
yeah,
I
Illinois,
specified private.
hold on.
I'll
I'll get there. Right. So Illinois and 22 other states required the government workers pay union fees as a condition of employment. Janus removed that from the public sector. However, currently in 23 states, the states that are not right to work, under the NLRB, unions can make, in their negotiations with the private business owner, they can make employment conditional upon paying fees to the union. In 23 states in America, it is legal for a union to make it thus that the only way you can get hired at the company is if you're paying union dues. You don't necessarily
Is that joining the union?
You don't necessarily have to join the union.
That was my
Yes.
specification all the time.
You
That
just have
goes
to pay
back
them
to
money.
That's
You
my
just have to pay-
specification.
Well, hold
That's
on,
my
right to work.
specification the entire time. I said that you had to pay them money. I said that in non-right to work states you have to
Sprout.
pay them money.
Well,
it goes
right
back to my
work,
point.
Right to work is about the money.
Oh my gosh.
Right to work.
It goes back. It goes back to my point that people have talked about this, and it goes back to my point. Communications Workers of America versus Beck that instituted that the money that comes from non-union members, which I stated there's not a private institution that can force you to be a union as a requirement for you to work there. Not a single private institution can do that. Second off, it takes that money and puts it into a completely separate pot.
Okay, so
You agreed that doesn't matter. So why are you grandstanding on that? You agreed
Because it's not your money. It's not your money going there.
Okay,
It's not your money going there.
wait.
Your rent, you have more income to spend in other places. It doesn't matter that thing isn't coming out of your technical pot.
Look,
it doesn't matter.
And,
You're still paying
your
for it.
fees are significantly lower than dues.
None of that matters. When they set out for their budget, they are incorporating the fact that they're going to get some money from this place so they can spend more of this other chunk of money in a different place. And you know that. So let's move past this. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, two things, right? Two things. Since I'm being like so, I don't know what the fuck he's attacking at this point. But like first,
Well, I mean,
and
you haven't been
foremost-
able to apply what I said.
right? Because it
So-
would have to be like it would have to make sense.
Find
right?
a
So-
private institution that forces its employees. You want me to shut up because I'm proving you wrong. Find a private institution that forces its employees to be a member of the union, like you stated happened.
The union
you can
forces
respond.
the company.
And
The
then I wanna also
union
go to
forces the company so that they're not allowed to hire people unless they're in the union. It's not the company
That's not
that
the
is
way
the
that
one
works.
forcing the union membership. It's the
That's not the way that
union
works.
contract because they know they won't, because their entire employee base is unionized, and they have contracts that are state binding and enforced by the state that says that if it's in your contract that everybody has to be in the union, then everybody has to be in the union. You don't get to hire scabs. That's what right to work is that you can hire scabs. You can hire people that aren't in the union. Like what you're saying is find me a business, and I'm saying 23 fucking states. Like that's what the whole point of right to work is.
You understand
And
there's
also,
not a
your
single
second-
private business that does. There's not a single private business that has a union that forces every single new employee to join the union. That there is not a
Force you
single
to
private
pay.
business that does that.
I'm-
You force you to
I'm-
pay, but you're not a
Still
member of
force
the
you to
union at that
pay.
point, are you? Are you a member of the union at that point?
Hold on, Sprout. On Wikipedia,
You're
they say it's
paying
called
the
a
union.
No. They say it's called a closed shop. So you can go to Google and type in closed shop. A closed shop is where the conditions for employment mean that you must join the union. So just look.
Okay,
up.
so
That's what
is
it's
there?
called.
So where are the closed shop
Guys, I don't
unions?
know anything.
Where are the closed
I
shop
have no
unions?
clue. I don't care. I just want to move past this conversation. I'm
Yeah.
just giving you that
Second point.
information.
The second point that to answer and address your issues is you're pro-life, right, Sprouticus? Are you for the federal government giving money to Planned Parenthood, even though Planned Parenthood says they don't use that money for abortions?
I mean, no, I'm not for. I'm for what happened when they said that they legally cannot do that. Yes, I was for that. I don't. It's not really any of my.
You support the state giving money to Planned Parenthood as someone.
If you
that's
take that
pro-life.
away, you understand. You take away a lot of the family health centers too, right? That actually don't do abortions. You take their money away too, right?
I thought you were pro-life.
You understand? You understand with that one step you take.
Pro-life.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you just gotta go that. You got down that road.
I
With that one
wanna-
step you take it also away from family health
start to
centers that
move
don't
forward.
that
I wanna
don't do
start to move
abortions
forward.
and only focus on maternity health.
Yeah,
I
I've
wanna-
spoken
sorry,
to Maddie
let's
before
not-
too. I know the DNC
let's-
talking.
Sure. I just want to move past this. So going on that point, and I'll throw to you, Fanatic, and everyone else can jump into this. If you guys think that there is a problem with forcing workers to contribute to an organization that's taking political action that is against their wishes, right? I can see the validity of that. But what about the corporations themselves? So the corporations themselves also fund political action committees. They fund
Amazon spent
that-
$19.3 million last year. Unions in their entire collaboration spent 50. So one company did almost 2/5 of that. Yeah.
So it seems like the corporations are doing much more of this, right? If this is the problem, right? If this is something that is a big issue, then why is and corporations are already doing it? Shouldn't there be a balance on the other side?
But it's not the other side if you're not voluntarily doing it.
Yeah.
Well, but it's not voluntary happening on the corporation either, right? Like,
Yeah, it is. The corporation is voluntarily taking their profits and lobbying with it. Like, I have an issue with
No,
lobbying.
but the
obviously.
workers, no. I'm sorry, maybe I'm not being clear.
The workers are into that.
Yeah, the workers are contributing to that.
No, they aren't.
Hold on.
You said because they're employed there, but the workers aren't giving money to the organization.
Yeah, they're giving their labor,
Yeah.
and they
They're
take
freely
the
trading their
difference, right,
labor.
between.
They're adding
They're free to
value
trade
by
their labor in the
Oh
union.
my god,
right?
this is just dumb Marxist surplus value shit. No, you are fucking you have a job. You sign a contract for a job. You are paid a wage based off of the work that you do. You are freely doing that. You're not giving like your surplus value of labor to Amazon
going to a contract,
so that they can
and you also
fucking
freely going
like
to a
give
contract
lobbying
with
money
a
to the
union.
government.
There's a union shop, right? And the union says like, "Oh, we got to pay the union dues," right? You're also freely going into that contract. So I don't understand what the fucking difference is.
It's not really free because under the NLRB, like corporation, like you're not even allowed to like say certain things when there's unions organizing. You're not allowed to like terminate.
Same
employees.
thing with a corporation. Like when you're not unionized, you're not allowed to say things, right? You can.
No, you're not. Like for example, like a corporation can't like one of the things you can't say, even if it's true, by the way, even if it's true, a corporation can't say, look, if the union wins, like we may go out of business. Legally, like if they say that, they can't even speak that, even if it's true. If they say that, they're going to get in trouble, right, with the government. So, I mean, how free is this contract really when they can't even like say the truth?
But like corporations censor people's speech all the time, whether it's true or not. Correct?
So, in any ways that corporations use government power to censor somebody else, I am opposed to that too, and I think you should be as well.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just trying to state.
That's
like,
not what we're talking.
So because we haven't.
Yeah, they don't do it here.
But we haven't gotten this baseline yet that corporations use their funds to fund political action committees, right? And so, they use it to fund campaigns that you might not agree with. As a worker, I don't have a say in that. It's just a thing that happens, right?
But you're not.
I have
pointing
a
out
say
the
on where I
distinction.
work.
The distinction is one is voluntary and one is involuntary.
No, both of them. No, they're the same level of voluntary or involuntary.
PrimeCayes, if they were the same level of voluntary, then why would people need to write a bill to make it illegal for corporations to be able to have right to work? It's obviously not voluntary because you're trying to make it illegal for voluntary things to occur.
Yeah, this whole discussion about banning right to work states, right?
No. Look.
Yes,
you can call
that's
it whatever.
literally what this is about.
Sorry. Look, did you not hear what I said? You can call it voluntary or involuntary, wherever you fall on the spectrum. I'm saying the point of what I'm saying is that this is the same. This is the same behavior. So
But you can be principally
not
against
right.
both, but it's not the same behavior at all.
That's
but
like
you can
saying
be
rape
principally
and
against both.
consensual sex is the
yeah,
same
that's,
behavior.
no.
Are
but
you
I have
pro-rape?
to- That's
Are you a
look,
rapist?
Come on, nice try.
Prime,
Whatever.
let me- Prime, I-
Scott,
I-
One has
Prime,
consent, one doesn't.
I
okay,
actually
Lactoid.
understand.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand the thought process here, right? What you're essentially saying is, well, when you've got corporations that are, profiting off of the employees and they're taking that profit and they're putting it into political action campaigns, how different is that really from unions taking union dues that they've contracted with and putting that into political action campaigns as well, right? That's essentially your argument. I think the difference here is the first difference is, in the first exchange, I am going to, company A or sole proprietorship A, and I'm making an agreement with them. And they're making an agreement with me, right? They're paying me something in exchange for my labor. When you introduce a third party into this agreement, it gets a little bit tricky, right? If the third party is entering in consensually by both parties and all three parties are consenting to each other, that's totally fine. The issue is that this third party is not really entering into this situation consensually. They're entering in at the behest of one of the parties, and the other party is limited in their contractual ability to negotiate because of government policy. So under the NLRB, for example, one side of the contracting party is limited in what they can say. They're limited in what they can do. They can, even if you're in that will state, they can no longer terminate people for engaging in activities that they don't agree with. And so when you have a situation where you're stripping one party away of their bargaining, and by the way, you can't even fire people for striking. So if you have a union who goes on strike and just refuses to work, if I stopped working tomorrow, I would get fired. But if I went on strike tomorrow, all of a sudden it would be illegal to fire me.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. So, Lactoid.
Because you don't care about consent. You're pro-rape.
Sure. Okay. I mean, if your understanding of rape is just that insignificant, right? If it's that terrible, then sure.
Yeah, I care about consent.
If
you
it's
don't.
If it's that reductive, then sure. Okay, great. Good work, buddy. I'm so proud of you. All right, A+ for Scott. All right, moving on. Back to Lactoid.
Mean all you want, but you're against consent.
Lactoid. From the guy who compares this to rape, right? Amazing. Lactoid. So you're saying that when they are in this contract, right? One, they decide to sign that contract. So I'm coming into this union shop, right? And at some point, I got to make a decision, right? I'm understanding it's a union shop, unless of course they're somehow hiding it from me. But I'm understanding it's a union shop, so I voluntarily enter in that contract. Knowing that there's an intermediary. There's already an intermediary being the government, right? Because the government limits bargaining power to a certain extent too, right? Hey, I can't be a kid and working in this coal mine, right? The government has a role in these contracts. It limits that for labor protections already. That's the thing that happens. So that's no different from a union, right? That is also a third party that's in there. And then I do it voluntarily because I'm signing that contract. Right? Okay. So that's
no. Not necessarily. Okay. So we were talking about like child labor laws. There's an interest here in preventing a child from engaging in an activity that they could hurt themselves in, because we have this paternalistic attitude towards children, which I think is fine because we can be paternalistic against literal children. All right. What's different here is that we're privileging unions using the law in ways that simply do not apply to anybody else. Like I said before. If I walk out of my job tomorrow, I will get fired, right? Because this is it makes no economic sense. It makes no sense for the business. And if the agreement between me and the business is truly consensual, then either of us should be able to end that engagement at any time, right? If I want to quit, I should be able to quit. The government, the corporation can't force me to stay there.
Unless it's in that contract, right? In the agreement that there are procedures beforehand.
Yeah, but they force the agreement using the NLRB because the company is limited in how they can negotiate.
But everyone is limited. This idea of some sort of limitation on bargaining, this as if this is something specific to unions. No, just contracts themselves are limited as to what you can even ask for within a contract. So I don't know why that necessarily is a problem here, but we're not understanding, apparently not understanding that when it comes to an individual bargaining, they are very limited as to what they can get right? The point of the union is to collectively bargain. The point of the union
That's not true.
is understanding that. Sorry. GSU, you're a special case, right? Special bird GSU. He's very successful. He actually is very successful in his own thing. So when he does his negotiations, right, he can get a lot of stuff, right? Because he's just actually that good, right? So, but for most people are stuck with whatever they can get from a corporation. Correct? Good. So
Right.
the
Because,
corporation
and wait.
has-
Can I address that one? What people are most stuck with whatever they can get. In the same way, like the corporation is stuck with whatever they can get from me, right? The consent is a two-way street. Like I consent to an agreement to work for them, and like they consent to pay me money. If they stop paying me, I'm not going to work for them anymore. And if I stop working for them, they shouldn't have to pay me. They should be able to can my ass, unless under the
they can
NLRB.
keep paying you and do terrible things to you, though, right? They can keep paying you and do.
I can quit at any time.
Oh, great! All right, great. So that's wonderful. So you can quit at
Yes.
any time.
Anybody can.
And you can be destitute at any time, right? You can just decide that, like, you can be homeless. You're just like, that's what all American workers have the power to do. They all have the ability to say, you know what? I don't feel like this anymore. Right? It's not working for me.
At most, this is an argument for like expanding like the social safety net. This is not an argument.
Exactly.
This is not an argument.
I know this is not argument.
Right. But this is not an argument for like saying that we should compel certain companies to enter into coerced agreements with labor unions, and then when new people come into those labor unions, to allow those coerced contracts to mandate that people who don't want anything to do with the union, now they have to pay money to the union. That's ridiculous.
Sorry. We've been drifting, right? Because I was trying to establish just literally one thing. So my arguments were no, don't worry. It's fine. On the panel, it's fine. But my arguments are directed at literally just establishing a baseline that within the context of political speech, right, that you are supporting, it is the same when the union does it and a corporation that you're working for does it, because you decided to enter in that contract, right? If you think that this action is voluntary, then you decide to enter in to that contract with these parties, right? Happens to be more than one party in this case, but that it's a singular contract. You sign the contract, and then you're in the club, and then they're doing what they want with the profits gained. Correct?
Yeah, like I agree with you. Like when you just cut out like the beforehand, you look at the end, it does appear to be the same. But I think that when you have rotten fruit comes from a rotten tree. I think when you have an inherently coerced contract from the beginning, in which like you have a party who uses government leverage to essentially force a contract onto another party, saying that from now on we get to have money from all the new people who come in, and you don't get to stop us, right? Because if you try to step on us, we're gonna like get the NLRB, we're gonna use that, we're gonna like strike, and you're gonna be fucked. And so you have to do this now. At that point, it makes the whole thing coercive, I think.
When you're in a market, right? And let's say you have a highly valued skill that isn't common. So let's look at welding, for example, right? Welding takes some technical expertise, takes a little bit of talent too, right? Some welding is actually somewhat artistic. Not everyone can actually do welding well, right? And it's a really sought after job. It's perfectly reasonable for a bunch of welders to get together and say, look, we have this valuable skill, and instead of letting one person kind of fly away and get a shit job or something, we're going to band together. We're going to have contracts with these companies that want to hire welders, right? That means that even in a right to work state, someone like welders, if they're treated poorly and they go on strike, those companies don't have welders. It's not easy to get good welders. It's not easy to hire a bunch of scabs that have the same technical expertise or have the same like flow in the company. It hurts their profits and it hurts them. And it shows that there's something wrong in the supply demand equation in the market for labor, because and so it balances out via collective bargaining. When you have the state come in and say that like Walmart workers are allowed to be unionized and you can't fire people for being in a union, and you can't do all of these things, what you have is a bunch of low skill workers that don't offer anything special to the business. And what you're doing is you're using the state to mandate that they're paid above the value of their labor and that they're given things above the value of their labor. And so what this does in a market is all of the businesses that aren't doing this are competing against a business that is shackled. This lowers jobs, this ships jobs overseas, this destroys manufacturing. It does horrible things. It is one of the biggest causes to the coal mining industry collapse was John Lewis fighting for coal miners' rights. And he gets all of these fucking praises for being this big worker, but tons of economists throughout time have called John Lewis the greatest salesman for oil because it drove up the cost of coal and people started switching to oil, and it actually moved us backwards in time technologically and caused massive energy situations, lowered rates, and collapsed a lot of coal mining industry. That's the dark truth of the actual economic effects of this, of using the state to enforce bad supply and demand equations because we demand that workers be paid more. It's part of cost disease.
Do you think coal miners had it good? You think coal miners were just like show up to work with a smile on their face every morning, just ready to get at it?
Okay,
wait.
Okay.
Hold on, one second. Fanatic, did you have anything to say previously?
No, I had
the issue.
Yeah, no, I had something for the other person, but we're so far past that. I'm just gonna go ahead and let y'all go. Go ahead.
Okay, GSU.
Cool. I just wanted to drop some facts in the conversation in case we wanted to use any of those. So I looked up the numbers, and it seems like 11% of full-time workers are in unions, and 6%, 6.9, I think it said, of part-time workers are in unions. And we know that overwhelmingly, part-time jobs typically are the least paid. They're the ones who aren't going to have benefits because they aren't full-time. So it makes sense to present this idiotic argument that people inside of a union are doing better, given that they don't even represent most of the population of the worst jobs in our culture. Like, so it's obvious that they would get paid more. And I'm not saying that they wouldn't. I wasn't debating I wasn't disputing that they don't get paid more. I'm disputing the idea that you can extrapolate where they are and saying that as these things grow, these things will remain true because they aren't dealing with some of the worst jobs in America.
Okay, so then of course I asked you multiple times, and I'm pretty sure you haven't done it, and I'm pretty sure you never will. Can you find a single study that is obviously anti-union, right? That supports the idea that that controls for full-time versus part-time and says something to the contrary? Because if we all intuitively know this thing, then the onus is on you to prove it. And it seems like you keep appealing to the idea that your study probably didn't control for X. And all I'm saying is then find me a single, all I'm saying, you interrupt me every time when I try to make my point. Jesus, I'm just going to stop talking to you. And find me a single study that does control for it and says your point. There we go.
Okay. I don't care to do this game. I asked you to send me your study, you didn't. Oh. But you can stop talking to me. I really don't care at all. But the point was you can't there's no way to control when the numbers are that egregiously imbalanced. But yeah, you can do whatever.
Okay. I don't care. Yeah, you're right.
If you think that you can compare 5% to
no, you're right.
95%. Yeah.
Yeah, these things can't be controlled for. You're right. Makes sense.
Yeah, they can't be. Yes, absolutely.
Prime, sure. I have a quick question for you. Before, when I said that I can get fired for walking off the job, but if me and enough people get together and make a union and we walk off the job and don't work, all of a sudden we can't be fired. And you said, it's a good thing. Do you think even outside of the union context, do you think that I should be able to walk off the job and not be fired?
Outside of a union job?
Yeah, so let's say tomorrow I just don't show up to work. Should I be fired?
Actually, if you don't show up to work on one time, I would say probably not. There might be reasons for that, right? But I see what you're going, so I'm not going to dodge your question.
But the question is how many days do I have to miss before you say, okay, we should fire?
So generally, most companies have a 3-shift before you get fired. You have to no call, no show 3 times in a row, without any communication about hey, I am in the hospital, or whatever. Just you're absent for 3 shifts in a row,
Okay.
then you can be fired.
So
And the point of saying that is that we should have allowances for workers, right? Because
Yeah.
things happen.
let me follow that
Yeah.
up then, because in the context of striking, it's been in many historical cases a lot longer than just 3 shifts, right? In the 1980s and 70s, like New York was notorious for the garbage men and the garbage collection agencies going on strike and garbage piling up. Like
Lactoid.
Right.
Oh,
The
oh,
reason
this-
those can last so
Lactoid,
much
I've-
longer than 3 days is because that's a whole group organizing as a strike, not just one individual person. The 3-day rule is an individual.
right.
Lactoid,
So,
I've got a question for you regarding what you're saying, right? So you're saying that like the union as a whole, or this group of people as a whole, can go on strike and they can't legally be fired, right? So if you just decide not to show up to your job one day, what's the probability that you're doing it out of protest? What's the probability that you're doing it because like the job, even if you say like the job conditions are terrible, right? All your coworkers decide they're not terrible. All your coworkers show up to work. So like, even if you're doing that, I would go as far as to say the odds are probably in the favor that you're probably a bad employee. And that's probably why you think that your boss is being hard on you, that there's toxic work conditions, etc., and so on. You're probably being a bad employee. And you're decided to take the day off work just because you decided to. Like, I don't know how you're comparing the two when one is extremely organized and the other is not.
so the
And a
reason I'm
strike
comparing
or
the
a
two.
unionized group of employees needs to have the support of the union as well in order to get the
I know.
protections.
Yeah, it's just
I know.
numbers,
I know.
bro. It's
The reason I'm comparing the two is because it seems to me like the only difference that you guys can draw here is, well, if a union does it, then it's okay. But like, if I walk off my job, we all recognize that like I can't like
Organization.
I can't like not work for 3 or 4 weeks. Like, why is it that like a company, if this is truly a consensual contract, why is it that a company is expected to keep somebody on the job when they haven't shown up in 4 weeks if they're part of a union and the union's doing a strike? But when I like walk off the job and just don't like go on a bender for 4 days and I get fired, like everyone's like, oh, that makes sense.
Because you're
first
not
of all,
making an organized, coercive, like cohesive protest statement. You're not asking.
Why is that
You're not
important to the
asking for
consensual
4 days.
contract, though?
You're not asking for better
nothing to
working
do-
conditions. You're not protesting.
It has
labor
nothing to do with
actions,
any of that.
etc.
It has to do with the
Well,
law.
but
laws,
what if I
rules,
am
like-
though?
No, no, no.
You
It
said you were
doesn't.
going on a
None of
bender.
this shit
You didn't say you
matters.
were protesting.
Okay, but
so
let's ignore the
just
bender
that
part.
was your example.
Let's ignore the
we
bender
can't
part.
ignore the we can't
It's
go
no
into
waste
it.
of time.
I know. We can't.
This matters.
But let's say, right? Okay, but let's say instead of going in the bender, you know what? I get yelled at by my boss, and it's unfair. It's unjust. So you know what I say? I say fuck my boss. I don't really want to join the union because I also don't get along with the union leadership. But I'm just gonna fucking leave. I'm gonna walk off the job, and so I'm gonna protest until the working conditions improve, and this boss starts treating employees fairly. I will not come
Wait.
back to work, and I walk
Wait,
off the
Todd.
job, and I'm gonna get canned after 2 days, and I think that's
course.
reasonable.
Of course, Lactoid, because you're only one person. None of this shit that y'all are saying makes sense. The reason why this is happening because unions have collectivized and they've negotiated a better agreement than you have yourself. It has nothing to do with what they fight for when they go on strike. None of that shit.
No.
A
So-
large portion of them.
No, it's
No, the real
actually
problem
no.
here-
Hold on. It's not the contract that's negotiated between the union and the company. It's the NLRB, which literally
No,
makes it. It makes it. That's a good law. It's a government law, which makes it illegal to fire striking workers. Right.
See, this is the problem, right? Is like when the government is involved in this transaction, as opposed to a free market, what you get is shit like the Lay's protest, right? Where they lied about everything, and what we actually found out is that they were getting pay raises constantly above inflation, as a whole. That all of the shit that they were claiming that they were doing that were these horrible things to workers was not true. They needed people for additional shifts, and they were trying to hire people, and every single person that did this was completely voluntary, and they were saying that they were putting people on like forcing them to like either threaten to fire them or make them come into like back-to-back shifts, except they never fucking did that, except for I think they found like 2 examples or something, right?
Right,
And
so
they were
we're-
and so but listen, what happens is when the government gets involved in this, instead of having a supply and demand equation that says who we are as a union and our labor is worth this much to you, as opposed to the additional cost of bringing in new people and training them. If the additional cost of bringing new people in and training them doesn't make up the difference between like your supposed like tyrannical, corporation, big bad evil guy isn't paying you enough, that means your fucking labor's not worth that much. That's just the cold fact of reality. You're demanding more value from them, and all you're doing is making them uncompetitive in the market and
not
coercing them.
Not necessarily. So like it could be maybe that your labor is not specifically specialized. So then the likelihood of them being able to find someone to replace you, it seems pretty likely, right? But
right. That's the value of your labor.
I got you. But then there's also the idea that like the union, because of the fact that like if the union gets together and says, hey, if we make everyone do this simultaneously, the idea that you would be able to run through enough people to hire people, so on and so forth, that your losses wouldn't be really, really, really high, then that is enough, right? Because since they have the power of the collective, it's that much more controlling. And like,
no, I agree with
that. Okay, exactly. I don't think there's no way to disagree. It's just factually accurate. But then, and in that lactate, I think it's really ridiculous for you to keep on trying to say that the only reason why this thing is different is because the NLRB, as if unions didn't exist prior to the NLRB, and as if they weren't successful prior to the NLRB. I would probably say what really is that collective bargaining has its benefits, and that's one of the benefits, and that through collective bargaining and just through like the legislative process, they've also done other things to shore up the benefits of unions. But to try to say that this is only because of the NLRB, you obviously can see that that's just not true, right?
No, neither of us have made that argument.
Yeah, maybe I'll be.
You did. Talking about the state involvement.
So
Lactate did.
Maybe I was being unclear.
Okay.
Like I said in my intro, I have as long as you have like a union that's consensually organized. In principle, I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing.
No. That's not what I was addressing. I'm not addressing whether you think unions are good. I'm addressing the error of you stating that the reason why this imbalance happened was specifically because of the NLRB, when you and I both know that unions have been successful prior to that. You kept saying it's because of the legal process. It's because of a law. It's the law, and it's not because of the law, because clearly that's been effective before the law, right?
I'm not saying that the only reason unions are successful is because of the law. I never said that.
No,
what I'm saying is what makes union contracts coercive and not a free agreement is the presence of that law, right? Okay. The fact that they got the government involved now makes that contract a false contract. Now it's a coercive contract. Now it's really not consensual, because these companies don't have a fair shake when it comes to coming to the table and negotiating with these unions. They don't legally. And by the way, like even after the contract is signed, like even if the company doesn't agree to any provision that prevents them from firing striking workers, it doesn't matter. The law says that they can't. So if you're part of a union and you guys decide to strike, you don't have to go to work for like 10 days or more, maybe more than that, right? However long it takes. But if I do that, I'm getting fucking shit canned, because we can't have a society of people just walking off the job. This is why unions do have a negative effect on overall productivity and state GDP growth. This is why industry is moving towards right to work stakes. Look at the industry growth in the South. Look at the industry growth and all
there's been studies. There's been studies. There's been studies to say that any study that's gone on like a right to work study and seeing its effectiveness is considered widely inaccurate because it's very hard to just like singularly take a look at right to work, because when you look at right to work states, they're typically more pro business states. They've got other laws that regard businesses in more of a positive manner than the non right to work states. So when you look at these states, it's very hard to isolate just the right to work and to see what it's actually done. So any study that's actually tried to isolate the right to work and trying to see its effect on businesses, it typically has been seen as inaccurate because of how hard it is to isolate that one thing outside of any other law.
All right, you're saying
hold on, pause. I want to congratulate Sprouticus. He just understood one of the core principles of Austrian economic theory, right? Is that you don't actually get to isolate variables. What you do is establish historical facts. And then you call that a study because it has some level of bullshit engaged in its predictive model. You're right. So what we have to do is we actually have to look at human action and human behavior. And what we know is that when you add coercion to something that forces things away from a supply and demand equation, that what you are doing is you are limiting the productivity of that industry. And what does limited productivity of that industry mean? It has to mean higher prices. It has to mean less jobs. It has to mean something in order to balance of the difference between the actual supply and demand equation and the interferences of the state in that process. And that's regardless of whether or not you're using collective bargaining or not.
So I want you to thoroughly explain to me how not having the right to work in your state is going to affect the demand, because the supply would still be there with or without the right to without the right to work. So please explain to me how the right to work would affect the demand, like you just so eloquently
it's fine.
stated.
Right, it's fine. So let's say you work in Detroit, Michigan, and you're producing steel for automobiles. Let's just say that's a thing, right? And then unions come in, and let's say for whatever reason that the lack of right to work, right? And so like what you have to deal with this union. And if the union demands higher wages and demands better healthcare benefits and things like that don't actually match the supply and demand equation of labor, right? Which is to say that there is an equation of how many workers there are, right? And then what the demand is for those workers from the business. And so
you're okay with workers being treated worse. So you're okay with workers being treated worse. You're not okay with workers being able to argue that I should earn more. I should have been given this. I should have been given that. You're not okay with that. You're definitely okay with them staying right there in the bottom, right where they are, treated bad, because you know what? It would affect our bottom line if we had to pay you more money. So we're just not going to pay you more money.
No. Again, I'm trying to explain it to you. Just listen, right? I've made this point plenty of times. I have no issue with collective bargaining. I have no issues with unions collectivizing and then working with businesses. What I have an issue with is the government coming in, right? And stopping businesses from going, you're all fired because you're replaceable. Because if they are replaceable, then that collective bargaining is not bargaining on behalf of the value of their labor that's being like utilized by a large company that is able to do something. It's actually that they're in a situation which I called earlier. It's an economic principle known as cost disease, right? And so what is occurring is that the value of their labor, the productivity of their labor isn't increasing at the same rate as their demands, or the same rate as inflation, or at the same rate as other people's jobs, right? So like, for example, this is a big problem with teachers, right? They're a big sufferer of cost disease because the productivity of the labor of teachers doesn't go up so much once you introduce, like, let's say coding, right? Because that can exponentially scale. And so
yes, but everyone, sorry. Go ahead, keep going.
Sorry, I'm sorry for going on a diatribe, but I'm trying to actually explain the economic principle here, right? So when the state intervenes, right, I'm okay with the collective bargaining. The problem is that when the state intervenes, there's no way for the business to fire them and hire new people if their demands are ludicrous. They have to deal with people with ludicrous demands because the government won't let them simply hire new people at an additional cost because their demands are too high.
So here's what the problem with what Fabian is saying. And as technology increases, then the need for specialty decreases, right? So if you look at something like fast food, right? There's nothing going to be particularly demanding about fast food that would ever say that you have to say that you need to make you like particularly irreplaceable. Maybe if you're like in management, and even then, like, you know, it's just a generic thing. You're pretty replaceable. It's not a high skilled labor, and you'll find that a lot of jobs, the more technology is increased, then the lower the labor requirements. Even in like industries like freaking aerospace, like the mechanic jobs there, it's not particularly difficult to train a person. The jobs have been broken down so much in such an assembly line fashion that anybody can do those jobs. And so then what you end up in a situation where basically companies for all of those type of labors, which we all recognize now is really essential to American living, then those companies basically get to say, we're going to screw you guys over irrevocably. You really don't have any collective ability to bargain. And so we're just going to say, yeah, this is what we're doing, and there's nothing you can do about it. And if a bunch of fast food workers were like, "Hey, yeah, we're like literally getting burned because you refuse to update your equipment and things like that." And they said, "We're going to get together and we're not going to work until you do something about this." Then the people can just say, "Oh, well, we'll just fire you and we'll just like start doing some crazy, we'll do some crazy job fair at the local high school, and then we'll get a bunch of kids to come replace you. And then at the end of the day, they'll get the burns, and then the conditions won't improve, but it's only temporary. And as long as as long as people we're in a capitalist system, which is the best system in the world, and people need to eat, people need to live. So then that means that these people never have any incentive to actually respect their workers. And while we all recognize, again, this is not particularly high skill work, the idea is it is essential for a lot of people. I think they said something like this was like 8 years ago. I remember reading that like 40% of 30 to 40% of American meals were like had in fast food restaurants, right? So this isn't like this is some niche thing that nobody else is really participating in, and so on and so forth. This has become part of an essential part of America. Yet we're still saying, well, because the work isn't particularly challenging, it doesn't matter how much profit they make, they should be able to screw over workers. Some of us got better consciences than that. It shouldn't just be only the high skilled people that can collectivize. We should all be able to recognize that if something is working against the American people and against the laborers that are actually helping to make the things that we need work, I think that thing should be they should be able to collectivize against that thing. And that's what the purpose of those laws.
Two things real quick. First of all, the idea that technological increases reduces specialized labor is just not true, right? As technology increases, as creative destruction occurs, right, certain forms of specialization, right? Like we can look at the Luddites that were like, really against industrialization, or the shoemakers that were really against cars and things like that. Yes, forms of specialization of labor disappear, but new forms of specialization occur. And in fact, there's even more areas of that, right? We see this, of course, in like medicine, for example, right? We have all of these new types of jobs that have to be created because we need more specialization as the technology increases. You need X-ray technicians, you need sonar technicians. You can't just have doctors, you need an anesthesiologist now, right? Because things become ever more complex with new technological capacities. Now, when you're talking about the shift from manufacturing, right, over into the service industry, you're not really talking about specialized labor.
I didn't talk about
anymore.
That wasn't me. Right. That's not what I was talking about at all. But that is never done anything remotely close to that.
You poor child, you can't read between the lines of your own arguments, right? When you are talking about manufacturing leaving, right, which are low skill, high wage jobs.
I didn't.
And then the economy. And the economy is switching over to a service-based industry. That is not the same thing of a lack of specialization. That is an issue with manufacturing. And there's a ton of other things that we could talk about as to why those things are disappearing. Minimum wage is a reason why those things go away. Labor unions and the laws that go with them is a reason why those things go away. Tax havens, tariffs. There's a lot of things that contribute to the reason why we have an economy that is shifting over into a service-based industry. But you're using that in the form of argumentation about specialization of labor, and that's just not true.
So Fanatic respond, and then I go once again as well.
There's really nothing to respond to. He just went off on a complete straw man diatribe that had nothing to do with what I'm talking about. So you can just go to the next person. That was stupid.
Can I answer?
So listen,
so I go and then Lactwit.
Yeah. So I hadn't. I had to look up cost disease, and tell me if I'm wrong, Fabian. But it says it's about the rise of labor cost without a corresponding rise in productivity. Is that right?
I mean, that's the strictest economic definition. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm dropping just a quick graphic into the chat, also into the Twitch chat, that is showing that we're seeing the opposite, and we have been seeing the opposite for about 40 years now, where we've had increases in productivity without corresponding increases in. No,
the problem is that chart's not individualized, right? And so what cost disease is talking about is not necessarily just that specifically, but when economists look at cost disease, they're often looking at how like one industry will become way more productive and then other industries will become less productive. And what is occurring is like a need because of inflation and wealth disparity and things like that. People with less productive industries or plateauing production, right? they advocate for more wealth and things like that because the income inequality is growing
Right.
or something
So
like
so
that.
this isn't necessarily generalizable equally across all sectors. Like I get that.
Yeah,
But all I'm saying is
We're all
there might need to
companies.
be some work done to look at how we can compensate for these increases in productivity and tie labor cost increases to them somehow, so that that prosperity can be shared by all. And maybe that means we don't treat every industry the same. Maybe there's some industries that are like suffering more from cost disease, but on balance it looks like what we're suffering more from is increase in productivity that doesn't result in increase in pay. And so maybe unions can be part of a solution that can compensate for that, and that cost disease effect can be something that sort of like corrects for the opposite problem that we've been having for 40 years. At least when you
Cost
average
disease
everything.
is descriptive, not prescriptive, right? It's just explaining what's
Right.
occurring, not like adding or attaching a moral value.
Right, but that wouldn't necessarily be an equally bad thing in across all sectors of employment, right? You could at least recognize that there are some areas where productivity has gone up a lot and there hasn't been like wage gains there. So maybe those areas could benefit more from union activity than say other areas where cost disease would, really be a problem.
Let's go to Lactoid.
Okay, two things in that last point. Not only is this graph not separated by sector, it's also not separated by company. I'd be very interested to see if it's non-unionized companies, which are what percent of the rise in productivity, especially recently, what percent of that rise in productivity they're responsible for, as opposed to unionized companies. The other point is,
I just dropped one looking at different industries, for example.
Right. Oh, yeah, I remember now. And not only the other thing that needs to be taken with a grain of salt with these graphs is that even though overall productivity might be growing, that doesn't necessarily mean that the inherent the value that's being provided by the job skills are in these specific industries are more valuable. But it could be that just the magnification of the productivity from the machines and the capital could be dramatically expanding that productivity more than the actual value of the work being done by the employees. That needs to be factored in as well. To Fanatic's point, I just wanted to throw just one thing. You kind of talked about the hypothetical of a company. Well, you got these employees that are giving me some riffraff. I'm going to kick them all out and then get a whole fresh set of employees. And there's no disincentive for doing this. I understand your concern, and this isn't like a complete, bullet to that argument. Turnover is incredibly expensive for a company, right? I mean, the range of costs. I mean, I've seen like very wide-ranging estimates, but like replacing an employee can cost like as much as a third of their annual salary if they leave. So if you kick out all your employees, like this is going to cost you tremendously, and if you're not large enough to handle it, very well might likely just bankrupt your entire company.
Yes, but I guarantee you, if the difference between like one is not going to bankrupt your entire company, but I would say the difference between that and like setting an industry standard of like, I don't know, a $5 raise for all of your employees for the rest of the time, for the rest of the time that you run that business, I guarantee you the cost to replace employees is cheaper than that, and that's one of the things one of the incentives to do that.
Well, the problem though is if you don't, and so you're not actually fixing the problem if you don't raise your wages for your employees, right? Because you're going to continue having high turnover, not just this year, but also in the employees that you hire next year and the one after that, right? And if the cost of a turnover is a third of that employee's annual salary, and you have a turnover rate, this is one of the reasons why companies go bankrupt, right? It's turnover rate. So if every year I'm losing like 30% of my employees, the cost of like turnover, like recruiting, retraining, all that stuff, that would bankrupt me, right? And now it very well could be cheap. Yeah, quality. It very well could be cheaper to give them that raise, right? Because
it could be, but in the situations where it's not, then that's what they'll do every time.
Right, exactly. This is like
so that's not a defeater at all. It just seems like it's just like hey, here's an extra nuance to this thing, but it doesn't really defeat what you were talking about. And it seems like you do have a valid argument that yes, that this is one of the problems, the reason why we would need such an incentive in the first place.
Sure, but this introduces like the idea of the supply and demand curve, right? Because if you have employees that are valuable enough to pay more because you don't want them to leave, because you want to avoid that continued cost of turnover, right? Then you're going to have to pay them more. Otherwise, the cost of the turnover is going to be more expensive than just paying them more, right? If they're not worth keeping.
We've gone way too far in this hypothetical, bro. This is a waste of time conversation. I made my point. I think everyone else. I made my point. I think everyone. I got you. I made my point. I think everyone understood it. I don't really want to engage in this back and forth. I think this is stupid, beneath me and beneath you. I made my point. It's clear. Move on.
God has spoken. Let's move on.
I mean, like when Fanatic doesn't have an argument, he says things are stupid and it's beneath him. He's done it several times tonight.
Yeah, you're right. That's I believe that you believe that.
Yo, this is getting more and more egregious. Oh my God. So just looking up the data, which a lot of people don't want to do. So I was looking up just like what % of union workers are in jobs that typically would already have benefits, because we're comparing this section of people to a different group.
Everything besides what I told him to look up.
and in this, 33% of union workers are in public sector jobs, and 89% of people in public sector jobs already have healthcare benefits. So, and I can't remember the exact number, but like only 15% of union workers are in part-time jobs. So people with full-time jobs typically are going to have better benefits. So the idea of saying that this group of people, and it's because they're in a union, is why they have better benefits rather than the jobs that they typically hold, police officers, teachers, all these other public sector jobs, and all of that. Like, it's obvious that it's the jobs that they hold in the industries that they are a part of that is more influential on the outputs rather than the unions themselves.
Why stick to the public sector? Why not go to the private sector? Because the private sector is where the real debate is, not the public sector.
Not only that, if we're
teachers,
right? No, but not only that. And again, it's really interesting to me.
Police unions.
It's really interesting to me when we can do all the research in the world. We'll take all the time studying as much as we possibly can, but never actually just look up an actual study. So I will find stats to support, so I can say, see, even with these stats, it seems even less likely, and so on and so forth. But never actually find an actual study to support whatever it is that you're actually talking about.
The first thing I said, hey, Fanatic, can you send me that?
I agree. I totally agree. You did ask me for that. And I told you that I wasn't going to. The reason why I wouldn't, because this was intuitive knowledge. And if something is intuitive and makes sense to everybody, asking me for a study to prove something that is intuitive, I think is absolutely absurd. If you're trying to say that you disagree with what is one, common sense to everybody else, two, studied by God knows how many different people, and you're saying that you disagree with those things, that, I mean, literally a simple Google search. Someone in my chat said it. They found the exact same thing. They were like, yeah, you just Googled this. And I'm like, yes, I Googled it, but it was something that we already knew. Even off the top of my head, I would have told you union makers make more money. So if you're going to disagree with if you're going to disagree with what the studies already know and what we already knew intuitively, then that means that you need to have something of your own that you can point to, but you do not. That's it. So you're telling me to prove what we already knew intuitively.
Okay, so some idiots...
He's not going to respond to anything I said. Watch.
Some idiots here can't listen. I never disagreed that union workers make more money. Since the beginning, I've said that's true. I never disagreed that they have more benefits. Since the beginning, when you first said it, I said, yes, that's true. Let's look into why that's true. The reason why it's true is because these people are typically holding down jobs that are better than the jobs that they're being compared to, and the average worker in America that's working 2 part-time fucking jobs that's not a part of a goddamn union. But this idiot, all he wants to do is mute and talk to his chat now because he doesn't fucking listen. The entire time I said, yes, the facts that you're saying are true, but why are they true is important. And if we find out that these people are disproportionately holding jobs that already have those benefits, even for non-union workers, then it calls into question the research on whether or not the fucking union is being helpful or whether or not they're just in better position jobs than most Americans. But this idiot can't understand that.
Okay. All right. Well, I love that we end that topic on a great note.
It's pretty common knowledge that you can point out the methodology of something as a means of casting dispersion on whether or not the claim is true, and you have to defend it.
I'm glad we ended that topic on a note of fraternal brotherhood, right? Of love, right?
Absolutely.
So, okay. Thanks for that. All right, we'll continue on to our next topic. Before that, though, guys, if you're enjoying this content, hit that follow button right now. Make sure notifications are on so you're not going live. We do this all the time. Don't want you to miss out.
You know,
More on
sometimes
the
I just
content,
love
extra
fucking
social, and
Fanatic
chat.
for being
Or
so
hit us
fucking
up on
wild.
Twitter, Discord. We have.
I want to
everything
hate
else
him,
on
but
Discord, right?
it's just funny
TikTok,
sometimes to watch him just
and
scream into the
YouTube. Like,
void.
comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Okay, so we are. Oh, man, I remember. Hey, Gambit, your mic sounds harsher. We can hear you perfectly, but your mic sounds harsher than it usually does. I'm not sure if it's the gain or something. I don't know, but like I know you usually have really good sound, so I'm just pointing that out there.
Is it better?
Well, we'll see when your voice
Okay.
escalates. Um,
I'll tone down. I just hate
Okay.
nonsense.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, you usually get annoyed oftentimes, but your mic is just a little.
I'm sorry, Chad. I
moving
try
on.
and control the volume, but he
So,
goes from talking
topic
quality
2.
to screaming.
An Alabama woman was forced to stay in jail for 3 months to protect her fetus from her drug addiction. The woman admitted to police that she had smoked marijuana on the same day she found out she was pregnant. This triggered a state law that prohibits pregnant women who have used drugs from leaving jail without first being enrolled in a drug treatment program. But since she simply smoked weed, no treatment facilities would take her. This left her in a legal limbo while being stuck in jail. What do you make of such a law? If you are pro-life, shouldn't you be in favor of a law that restricts a woman from harming her fetus? And if you're pro-choice, should the state ever have the right to interfere with a pregnant woman's choices, even if she chooses to use hard drugs? So yeah, this was a state law that has been in place for quite a bit, and they have a habit of locking up pregnant women, and of course, it's gonna be the poor ones, right? But yeah, this woman just happened to admit that she smoked pot, but it just wasn't serious enough. Wasn't serious enough for the state, for any facility to actually take her in, and so she just kind of stayed in jail, right? Like as she was pregnant and suffering from medical complications, pregnancy-related medical complications. So a really, really terrible situation. So yeah, very curious what y'all have to say. We'll start with my man, Fanatic.
I think this is a problem that the problem is not necessarily the policy and the idea. I think the problem is that it's the execution. It's the concept that you would like restrict someone over weed. I guess I haven't really done a whole lot of study. I mean, I haven't really looked it up to know if weed is actually like particularly harmful to a fetus. And if it is, then I mean, I guess I can understand that it would sound like that might be a smart thing to do. The problem is just to make sure that if you're a state that's going to require someone like that they can't be free, whatever, so on and so forth, then that means that you probably need to make sure that you're that you also create the forum for someone to be able to be, treated for something like marijuana, if that's something that's worthy of restricting a person over, right? So it's really just a problem of the two thing really just being like there being some mismatch there, right? Like, well, weed is not that important, but weed is not serious enough or severe enough that people will treat it, but it's severe enough that will keep you locked up for it. So then they just need to fix that mismatch. And then besides that, the policy is great.
Thank you. Okay. And thank you, Jack, for the 100 bits. Inform Chatter for gifting a sub to Mousy, and for 0 alms for resubbing. We're on the hype train. Support the channel. Now's a great time to do so. You get exclusive emotes when you do. Like
everything he says, I say too.
And
donate to me, bitches.
We better Hanthy for resubbing for 16 months. We have 53% of level 1 hype train.
Give me money.
47% left. Can we get to level 2 hype train?
Should be in jail for
channel,
doing
get
drugs
bits, or gift subs. Support the channel. Support what we're doing. We like the content we do here all the time. Then hit us up. Thank you, Jack, for gifting us up as well to NoFX Live. Yeah, so 70% left, 30%, 70% done, 30% left, 3 minutes on the clock. Can we get to level 2 hype train? Need your help to make that happen and to support this content. Keep us up and running. Thank you so much. Let's go to Scott.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to establish is that there is limited evidence that marijuana can do have neurological development issues. There's limited evidence that it can affect birth weight and the kind of due date. Well, even less so. But so most of the evidence is kind of meh, right? Like we don't really know. It seems like it might present some harm to the development, especially like really early. Now that that's out of the way, a woman has a right to her body, and so does the baby. This is why pro-life and pro-choice can't really get their shit together, because they have conflicting rights, and both positions are completely devoid of any logic. Conservatives are, pro-life, and so they say that the life exists so they can just restrict rights and freedoms of people, and pro-choice people try and pretend like, they're not murdering a baby when they get an abortion. Both of these positions are stupid. So the thing is that what we need to know is, are you directly harming a child, and are you a danger to harming the child? The answer is, if you're taking drugs regularly and you're not going to do something about it, then you're obviously engaged in harming a child in your body, right? And I have no problem with kidnapping someone and forcing them to do that. This is also abandonment of the child. As far as I'm concerned, you should lose all rights to that child forever. Unless that child wants those rights back. And instead, and if any damage that is done, you need to pay restitution to that child until all of that damage is fixed, at least financially in some agreement. Now, the issue that we have here with why this horror story is happening is really twofold. Well, threefold. One being the war on drugs is fucking stupid. So there's all kinds of issues there. But the second one is prosecutorial power and the power of the state in general. To be able to enact things that are obviously fucking ridiculous when people slip through the cracks. And you can hear, even in the article talking about other people, like the disdain that prosecutors have of American citizens as like the enemy to the community. And this is what happens when you have a monopoly on power and violence in the justice system, and when they don't get in trouble for anything, no matter what the fuck they do. And the last situation is kind of tied to the war on drugs and crime in general, is the bail situation. Bail is an archaic and stupid system that we utilize because we have a broken justice system that does not get people into court in time. And the reason we have that is, again, the war on drugs and all of these other things that are backlogging our court system to such a degree. If you go through a grand jury proceeding and it is determined that there's sufficient evidence for you to go to trial for a crime that it presents a danger to other people, then you should not get out of jail, period, until you go to court. And you should have a speedy trial, not 2 years in Rikers, like within a month or two. Okay? And if those things don't occur, you shouldn't have to bribe the state to be able to get out of jail. And so the horrible prison conditions, the horrible bail system, and the horrible monopoly on power and violence of the state has allowed these situations, which are minor and rare, to be fair, to occur in what is otherwise something that is probably to a certain degree true. You're doing heroin, right? And you refuse to stop doing heroin, then you need to be locked up and told you're not allowed to fucking do heroin until your fucking baby is okay. And then you don't get that baby because you can't stop doing heroin.
Okay, thank you so much. We are at 15% of a level 2 hype train because of the kindness of individuals who are jumping in like a forum chatter. We have 85% left. Can we get to a level 3 hype train? Sub to channel, give bits, or give subs to get us there. Help us make it to a level 2 hype train. Level 3 hype train. Sub to channel, give bits, or give subs. We have less than a minute left. Can we make it to a level 3 hype train? Support what we're doing. If you like this content, hey, thank you for gifting 300 bits, Jack. For that help. If you like what we're doing, help us out. Help us keep this hype train going and keep this content going. So we're always here, always providing something like this.
Look, I'll occasionally shill for money, but like, Jesus Christ, dude, get the show on the road.
Something like what? Can we get to a level 3 hype train? Sub to the channel, get bits or give subs. Any more heroes in chat who can push us up the edge? Okay,
maybe that's why we don't get enough subs, because we don't constantly do fucking long ass things like, come on, hype train.
As to this specific situation in the article, I think that this is simply a loophole or like an oversight of a law that does make sense. Generally, I do think pregnant women should be prevented from actively causing severe brain damage to their child. Study after study shows that exposure to most illicit substances and even legal substances like tobacco and alcohol in vitro leads to incredibly negative societal effects, including bad health outcomes and bad crime outcomes. In this case, should she be forced to remain in jail when she isn't able to get into any of the treatment programs? So she is kind of in this weird limbo. I don't think so. That seems to be more of an issue with the treatment programs, but not this idea that we're preventing child abuse and the statistical worsening of our society in the most agreeable metrics, such as health and crime. I'm not sure about the risks of marijuana itself. I would err on the side of caution. And I also think about this not just on the statistical realities I think are inarguable. Maybe not specifically for marijuana, but for most of these substances that we know of. But on the individual level, right? I mean, how would you feel if due to her own selfishness and lack of impulse control, your own mother would disadvantage you so greatly when you're about to go into the world? Imagine not being as healthy, not being as smart, being quick to anger because of the person who is supposed to be the one person who unconditionally loves you in this world. I think it's sad. I think it's terrifying. And I think we have a rational basis to use the power of the state to prevent it from happening in as compassionate a way as possible.
Thank you so much, Lactoid. Aiko.
I'm glad Lactoid's on this panel because I'd like to sort of get his opinion at some point during the panel of what how he thinks the principle of prior restraint applies here, because it seems as though the law typically the way laws are typically framed is that they punish activity after it occurs, but they're not necessarily crafted to prevent crimes from happening before they occur. And to me, that's one of the big problems with this application of the law is that fair enough if there's some sort of penalty on the books for having smoked some marijuana in the 6th week of her pregnancy, which is what she did, that would be fair enough. But apparently there wasn't any such claim being made. She was just being detained in order to prevent what they thought she might do in the future. And I just don't know how that works. At least my layman's understanding of law makes it very difficult for me to understand how that can work. Also, this sort of reminds me of a couple of discourses that pop up every once in a while. It used to pop up a lot for fetal alcohol syndrome. So Fabian talked a little bit about how marijuana doesn't seem to be particularly harmful, but you can imagine the effect that it might have had if this had been alcohol instead, or large amounts of alcohol at whatever stage
Continuing
of pregnancy.
A gift sub. That's a fucking true warrior right there.
And that conversation comes up a lot, and it's
no
very
hype train,
difficult to
but
find answers for how you do that.
It's still fucking dope.
But then there's also the fact that Alabama is one of those states that had trigger laws, I believe. So now abortion is going to be, or is already, illegal in that state. So even if she had said, well, I don't plan on carrying this pregnancy to term, that's not an argument she can make in court in Alabama. And one of the things that always sort of crops up in my head when it comes to abortion laws is, I used to ask people a lot in abortion debates, if you truly believe abortion is murder or something like that, would it be okay to, kidnap somebody in order to save the life of that fetus? For an individual person outside of the state to be able to do that. And I don't know if you can make that argument for a case like this. It seems to me that you could also make an argument, or even make a much larger argument when it comes to something that is very obviously saving the life of the fetus, right? If the fetus is going to be terminated. And so I don't know what kind of precedent this sets. But it seems to me that it's become a very relevant conversation now in a post-Dobbs world.
Let's go to Genevieve, please.
Thanks. I think first and foremost, I want to clarify that I don't think anybody should ever be imprisoned or face criminal charges for marijuana use. I think that is bullshit across the board. I would advocate for anybody who's being held for a marijuana, as far as personal consumption or possession of a smaller amount, something of that nature. Use is just ridiculous on a federal level. With that out of the way, in regards to a pregnant person who is struggling with addiction or substance abuse, or even somebody who's not pregnant who's struggling with substance. Criminalizing them almost universally across the board is ineffective. We know that people who are given access to rehab facilities and counseling and who are treated in a non-judgmental way with medical professionals involved have a much higher rate of recovering from their addiction and not relapsing. And so I think that the way that this is handled across the board is completely inappropriate. If a pregnant person were to be presenting to like their healthcare professional as somebody who was using drugs on a regular basis, was suffering from addiction, then absolutely there should be intervention to get them the information necessary to get them into a rehab or inpatient facility where appropriate. And these do exist in some communities, particularly in the Bay Area where I'm from. There are a lot of really fantastic inpatient facilities for pregnant mothers who do have addiction issues, where they can work with OBGYNs, have access to medical care, withdraw from the substances under supervised care, and then work with social workers to, if they intend to pursue custody or maintain custody, to help them advocate for themselves once they've completed said programs and been able to be sober. And those people are the ones that we do see having the most ongoing long-term success.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go to Spartacus.
Okay, so generally I am against this, and we'll go over a little bit why. From my understanding, she smoked weed before she knew she was pregnant, same day before she knew. As a result of the policy, they actually hold several pregnant and postpartum women in the jail. Carolyn Suffren, an OBGYN expert on incarceration and pregnancy at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, wrote an affidavit urging the courts to release Banks. She wrote,
Hey,
distressing
thank you.
conditions in jail and
Thanks for
in
the
prisons, including the lack of consistent access to standard prenatal care, mental health care, poor diets, poor sanitation, infestations with bugs and vermin, poor ventilation, tension, noise, lack of privacy, and she goes on and on and on. It results in poor pregnancy outcomes for both the mother and the baby. This also goes towards the amount of drugs that are actually in jail. For anyone to think that drugs don't have a presence in jail, you are absolutely fucking joking. You have to be insane to believe that drugs don't have a presence in jail. Actually, she had a condition that increases the chances of miscarriage and preterm delivery. It also caused bleeding. And so the jail told her she could sleep on the bottom bunk. But unfortunately, her cell had one bottom bunk and 2 women assigned to it. So the other woman used the bed, and of course, the pregnant woman slept on the floor. She continued to bleed 5 weeks in jail, also suffered hunger and fainting spells. Currently incarcerated, she, at the time of this, is currently incarcerated indefinitely because the state will not accept her $10,000 cash bail. Why will they not accept $10,000 cash bail? Because the rehab places they were trying to send her would not take her because she was smoking marijuana, and they did not view it to be a actual valid thing that she would need rehab for. And so with all of this combined, it seems like just an absolute ignorance of the facts. And this is a awful situation that I wouldn't want to happen. That I wouldn't want to happen to anybody else. But no, the police are wrong. Alabama's wrong. The city's wrong. Anyone that had a hand in this seems like it was just wrong.
Thank you so much, GSU Gambit.
Yeah, there seem to be some questions around whether or not marijuana is bad for children from Fabian. Children of marijuana users were more impulsive and hyperactive and exhibited behavioral issues, lower IQ scores, and memory problems when compared to children of non-users. It goes on a list like a bunch of other stuff. It links to 3 longitudinal studies, but I'm not signing up for this website to see it. But as always, I'll share the link in the chat. But so yeah, I think whether or not these things have negative effects on children, I mean, it's pretty documented. So do I think people should be jailed over it? Man, that's interesting. Somebody said earlier about like just us having more rehabilitation as the public would be a good thing. I guess though, if somebody's doing this, I don't I don't know of a good solution. So maybe it's just because we don't have good solutions, jail is just what's happening. So I'm not completely against it, but I do think I do wish we had other options that we could lean on. But yeah.
Wow. Kyle?
Wonderfully said.
I'm not sure they're speaking at all. Kyle? If you're speaking, you're muted. So if you're trying to speak,
They had said their internet was
Yeah.
bad.
Right now she's
Might
just
have
staring. Right now they're just staring at the screen.
Isle of Isles?
Can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Isle. Can you just wave to the camera if you can hear us? Just want to know. It'll take a bit because it's supposed to
I mean, he's moving unless this is like
Yeah.
pre-recorded.
As pre-recorded. They popped out and they're popping back.
Isle
in,
of Isles,
so hold on.
they're in the waiting room. Yeah,
It
they're-
kind of sounds
Isle.
like we're doing like a Ouija board. Like, can you hear
Yeah,
us?
right. Yeah, right.
Move the chair if you can hear us.
Isle,
Please
you are
move.
Flicker the
muted.
lights.
Al, you're muted in Discord.
This
I'm
is
sorry, my
pre-recorded.
my connection is especially bad tonight, so I'm sorry for that. If it's my turn, I'll say this.
Yeah, don't.
When I
Oh, sorry.
what?
Keep going.
It was an accident.
Oh.
I meant to mute myself.
Okay, so when I first started going on these panels, I think in May, I caught a lot of heat from the PCNF community because I was even called disgusting because I said that in a hypothetical that if a woman were to say that she wanted to go on a hunger strike because she couldn't abort her baby, that I would support her being taken in to custody and being institutionalized until such time the baby could be taken out of her, and when it was viable, because I think that the baby has rights, and I don't think you should just kill a baby and do like things to harm a baby intentionally. So I think that this is something that I would normally support, but I think with this particular case in particular, I think the execution was wrong because I think that once they tried to give her the counseling, but none of the counsel spots for rehab wanted to accept it because they didn't think marijuana was a reason for accepting people into rehab. I think they should have let her go on her own recognizance at that point. And so I think the fact that I don't think anybody should be languishing in jail for on a technicality. I think that if they had no accommodations, they should have let her free. But otherwise, I think I support the broader proposal and process that's going down. I just think that she was someone who got caught in the cracks, and I feel like really bad for her because she probably didn't deserve all the hardship that she went through.
Okay, over to the panel.
So, GSU, I agree with what you're saying and the studies you presented. The reason I said that it's like a bit of an issue is the problem is you can't ethically like force a randomized control group, right, to like smoke weed during pregnancy. And so what we have to do is we have to attempt to like not do like a correlational thing here. And the thing is that like marijuana use is gonna be a little bit more low socioeconomic status than general. You can account for that, right? And it's not a big difference, but there's other things too, right? People that smoke marijuana are more likely to engage in high risk behavior, just in general. Like people that do drugs are more likely to engage in high risk behavior. What does that say about the way that you engage in child rearing, etc.? So the best evidence that we can look at is other mammal studies, right? And wonder, does that correlate with what's going on with humans that we're seeing longitudinally? And the only thing we can like really kind of say with like a level of certainty is slightly more likely to be a preemie and lower birth rate. And then we can see that there is a slight difference in animal studies in the neurological development, which might lead to things like ADHD and things like that.
Wait, no, to be clear, all of those things that I listed earlier show up in mice, which we use for a ton of studies as well, not just humans.
Right. I'm just saying, like, it's not like fully conclusive. Like, we could guess that it probably has issues, but like, it's just like we can't really do an appropriate study that would know for sure.
No, you are aware that a large portion of our medical industry is based off rats, right? And mice. You agree with that, right? That we do testing on drugs, and the way that we try to age them to see if it's going to affect us later in life. There's a whole problem.
I'm aware.
Okay, so you do agree that all the things that I listed show up in mice, right?
Yes,
It's not
absolutely.
it's not just maybe you're going to be a preemie. It's all that umbrella of all the other things as well, and that's the part that's problematic.
Right. What I'm just saying is that the data, like, there's some studies that say that it doesn't happen, right? So it's not like we have a ton of studies. It's not like we have a ton of studies that say like, oh, there's like a 20 or 30% like statistical significance way over. What we have is like inconclusive, but it seems like the science might be pointing towards the direction that like you might be more likely to have a preemie, you might be more likely to have neurological issues like autism or ADHD and things like that.
Are there studies? And I'm just asking because I've been looking up stuff and I haven't seen any. Can you link one of the studies that say that
it's inconclusive?
Yeah,
sure. I'll find one for you real quick.
Cool, appreciate it.
And also, I want to say that I want to push back against the idea that like the low economic status are more likely to smoke weed. All the studies have like pretty much came out that have proven that like we all smoke weed at the same rates. It's just that Black people are more likely to be prosecuted for it, specifically minorities, but specifically Black people. But we all use them at the same rates.
I wanted to call that out too. It's absolutely been proven over and over and over again that all demographics are using weed at the exact same time or exact same frequency, regularity, et cetera. So that's not a valid claim.
Yeah, it's just being used to stigmatize Black people by saying like, oh, see, they smoke weed, and there was like I guess the belief that it was like considered low. So then because of that, then like they didn't want to be associated with it. But in reality, yes, they smoke.
That's been part of the propaganda for 100 years, unfortunately.
I'm a libertarian, right? Like that's just not true. Like just touting out and saying that it's exactly the same amongst socioeconomic status is just not true. Right. Like, here you go. Here's one from NIH Scott, showing increased marijuana usage amongst people.
Scott, I think we got GSU. Static coming from. Is it GSU? It might be. Okay, no, so you there too then. Is it?
What? Yeah, it's GSU.
I thought it was when you were talking, but I could be wrong. All right, GSU. Okay. Go
is
ahead.
It when I'm talking?
I heard it when
you muted it. It went away. When you just muted, it went away.
I'm not muted though. I never muted.
Okay, well, we'll have to work it out because there's somewhere it's coming from. All right, Jishu, you want to respond?
Yeah, I was gonna say that, and I don't know if there's studies that particularly talk about race, but from NIH it says that people of more affluent status might experiment, but they usually have far lower levels and things like that. So they may experiment, but they don't use it at the same rate as lower economic status.
What would they be basing that off of? Would they be basing that off of prosecutions and the statistics?
Or self-reporting, because a lot of people who are in upper class are obviously not going to be as willing to self-report because they could be incriminated in their profession or their communities in ways where they have to be more discreet about it.
Like if you ask military, they're not going to self-report. Like if you ask anyone in the military if they smoke marijuana, you're going to have like maybe you have like a 2 to 5% like self-report rate.
So
yeah, this is from France.
Well,
the NIH study is from France, so yeah, it's what
okay.
It's not American, so I don't care.
Right. I'll be honest.
I was only talking about the U.S. I don't know about other countries. I don't care. Queen can suck me.
Sure. I mean, I'm seeing studies. I haven't read them, but it would seem to me to be somewhat counterintuitive to say that marijuana use isn't correlated with socioeconomic status. I think Scott, you said you linked a study. I mean, we know that like for every illicit substance and addiction rates, these are directly correlated to socioeconomic status. Poor people are much more likely to smoke cigarettes. Poor people are much more likely to binge drink. More, and with exceptions, I think to specifically cocaine, because of how expensive it is, are more likely to do drugs.
Wait, you said poor people are more likely to do drugs?
Yeah, to be like addicted to drugs and have like more copious amounts of drug use.
That's just false. It's just that people of the upper class don't get prosecuted as much as people of the lower class.
I'm sorry. I don't
So
know
they
if
would
you
smoke
just-
more, they would
Well,
drink
that's
more,
right.
but they would not do
No,
more drugs.
they would not smoke or drink. They would do the same rates. What we're saying is that, like, I don't know how many studies you have to see that like prove that like white people and black people smoke.
No,
weed at the
by
same
socioeconomic
rates.
status.
Nobody
not-
mentioned
not-
I got you.
race.
Yeah,
Well,
I get it. The
people
reason why I'm
smoke
mentioning race, the reason why I'm mentioning race, right, is because we obviously
'Cause
know
you're
that there's-
racist?
no, okay, sure, you can say so. I don't care about you and your little retarded digs. There's an obvious correlation between socioeconomic status and race, and so if it's true that people of a lower socioeconomic status say, smoke weed at higher rates, and we can say on average that black people have have a lower socioeconomic status than white folks on average, then it would make sense then that black people would be smoking weed at higher rates. Yet they are not. That's what the argument that I'm making to any person with the working
We've
brain.
heard
But if you
racist
guys don't,
equity
but if you
arguments
don't,
before. We get it, you're racist.
if you don't have a working brain, I'm totally fine with you not interacting with it. Everyone else who has a working brain sees it. You don't have to engage. It's fine. We see through you.
So this is a study.
Yeah, so
I
real
just,
quick,
I just,
I
this is from-
posted the study to you, GSU Gambit, right? One of the reasons for the similarities is because marijuana usage is often correlates with tobacco and alcohol usage,
yeah.
right? And so that's another like really like you can attempt to do so in self-report surveys, but like unless you're doing like a clinical trial or something where you have somebody like constantly coming in and being tested for alcohol and tobacco, like the self-report survey is gonna come with some issues as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
like it's
why-
not fully conclusive, but like I think it's fair to say that the evidence is pointing in the direction that there seems to be some harm from marijuana usage.
and it would
it's
seem,
nowhere the same as, like,
intuitive
a
as
crack.
well. It would seem intuitive as well, right? So like the new information is, like I said, I haven't read these, but like the conclusions of a lot of these studies I'm opening up is saying that like, yeah, people of lower socioeconomic status, they use tobacco more, they drink more alcohol, and they're more likely to binge drink, and they're more likely to like be problematic users of drugs, like specifically cannabis included.
They're also more likely to be addicted to drugs, not because
Gamblers,
of, like,
use the lottery.
Well, no, it's not just that. It's also that like one of the big reasons like that drug addiction is an issue is because of a lack of other things in your life, support system, financial success, etc. And we've seen replicated over and over again that one of the reasons why drug abuse is more common in low socioeconomic areas is because even though you might be using drugs at the same rate that a rich person is using drugs, you lose your job, things happen, you don't have that same network, and you're far more likely to turn to drugs as a coping mechanism, whereas wealthy people tend to have better support systems. They tend to be able to handle a financial stress better because they have money in the bank, right? And it's literally just a difference of environment that can change whether or not you become addicted to the drug, whether or not you just use it recreationally.
Okay, so I wanted to pull it back and refocus. So the question isn't specifically whether like marijuana is harmful. We can just assume that it is. It's fine. For the purpose of this question, we can assume that it is. It's the law in and of itself as a principle of the law. Is it right for the state to take such invasive action to protect this child? Like the child's not trying to be aborted, or the mother's not trying to abort the child, but still, the state has taken upon themselves to incarcerate this person for their own good, quote unquote, or sorry, the good of the fetus.
Then let's
And on the other
take it
hand-
there though.
I think so, yeah.
Let's take it there. The law's bad. The law is just categorically bad. It's openly ignorant of the actual facts of what's going on. And they decided to keep this woman in jail, even though she was literally safer doing what she was doing outside of jail than she was in jail. Jail provided many more complications that had to be dealt with that more than likely wouldn't have happened in the outside world, according to the experts. So no, I think this law is bad. It may have had good intentions, but the overall analysis of this law and how it's played out is it's not good for either the mother nor the baby.
So it's not
Yeah,
that the
but
law
the
is
law
bad.
is
I think what you're
intention
saying
is to
is
protect
this
the child
situation.
and
Right. Isn't it the execution, right? Because as I pointed out earlier, it's not about the law itself being terrible, because I think I agree with the concept of it. But I think the problem only comes when you get into this mismatch of marijuana usage. If the other people, if the whatever those institutions were demonizing marijuana usage such that they would like actually get rid of, such that they wouldn't allow such that they would actually like admit the woman, right? Then it wouldn't have been a problem. It's only a problem because they wouldn't, because they didn't view marijuana as that big of a deal.
I think
Yeah.
it's also a problem
That's the
because
problem.
while I do support them wanting women to, or pregnant people to seek out rehab services should they be in this situation, holding them in jail while they do that is not going to be helpful, beneficial to the fetus that we're trying to protect. It's putting them at risk for so many more negative instances. That if the point of all of this is to protect the fetus, we would be much better requiring that mother to check into an inpatient healthcare facility and not be in a prison environment.
But hold
you're
on,
probably-
the
you're
problem
probably-
that you're talking
the
about
article-
is only happening once again because of the specific drug. Because had it been like, for example, they reached out, the state is already doing the reaching out to the institutions for her. So that's not the problem. The problem is that these people wouldn't accept her. In order for them
No,
to have, in order for them to deny her, then that means that they do have a process that basically says that they were willing to move, that they had the ability to move her. They just couldn't because weed wasn't serious enough. Had it been literally any other drug, had it been crack cocaine usage, do you think she would have been sitting and rotting away in jail? No, it would have been just like that. Had it been for any of the other drugs, like any of the other illicit drugs, they would have said, no, we got you, we'll admit you, not a problem. And then that's that. That's not the problem. So the only problem is the mismatch between these two things. So let me make sure that we're clear here, Genevieve. If the state said that it would only take them, if the typical process literally took 24 hours, would you have a problem with it?
I don't think she should be arrested at all. Yes, I think that even holding her for 24 hours would be inappropriate.
She wasn't arrested for that. The article
She was
doesn't say what she was.
arrested for something else?
She failed a drug test at the jail.
No,
No, she was arrested because she was in possession of a pistol without a license.
Yeah, she had a gun.
Yes. Right.
Okay,
and
so
in
she
the
was arrested
interview,
for a
in
completely
the
separate
right.
situation.
They go through a basic interview, right, of someone that is pregnant. And then she said, yeah, I smoked weed like on the day that the baby was born, but that's not why she was arrested, right? And that's
Okay,
true
I
of most of
misunderstood
these.
that. I thought her arrest was related to her drug use, so I apologize for that.
The other
misunderstanding.
thing I want to say is
it just triggered the law.
there-
It triggered
Yeah,
the law.
Okay, gotcha.
So the thing
Deniement
is
of
the
parole
thing
was
is
the
that there's only 13 people that are in this situation. In the state of Alabama, there are 13. The article says there's 13 people that were stuck in this limbo situation where they're not able to get out on bond and get into a drug treatment facility, and that they're stuck in prison. And so the real answer here, like without like getting all libertarian philosophical on you, is just put those fucking 13. Just put those fucking 13 people in like a hospital. Like if it's that limited, right? It can't be that much of an additional resource cost to not have pregnant women stuck in a fucking prison with like elevated cortisol and all these other health issues. Like just fucking solve this. It's a stroke of the pen.
We're gonna go to Ico. We're gonna go to Ico next, then Lactoid. Man, like it's interesting where you guys are taking this. It's not where I was gonna take it, and I'm gonna argue you guys all under the table for this later on. But Ico.
Yeah.
And then,
Okay, so really, I'm trying to bring it back to what you wanted to bring it back to, Prime. I think that's what I'm about to. Maybe not.
This is
I really
hilarious
just
that he
wanted
thinks he
to,
can
'cause I
argue
mentioned
anyone
this
under
in
the table.
intro.
Still hasn't
I think
accepted my
Lactoid
CRT
could probably
debate.
give us the best answer to this, so I just really wanted to bring it up and then have him answer the question. How is this not prior restraint? And if it is, are there justifications for prior restraint here that normally don't apply?
So this is perfect because my answer to this is actually what I was about to say. The beginning of the article, police arrested Ashley Banks on May 25th with a small amount of marijuana and a pistol without a permit to carry. So she had marijuana on her and a gun. She admitted to smoking pot 2 days before her arrest, which was the same day that she found out she was pregnant. So she was in possession of marijuana 2 days after she found out she was pregnant. So I still feel bad for her for sure, but like it's not like this wasn't something that she was doing. That's what she was arrested for having on her. This idea of there are times in American law in which there are quote unquote punishments and restrictions placed on people that don't necessarily have to do with a crime that's occurred yet. Not only do we criminalize people getting together, what's the conspiracy, right? Conspiracy to commit a crime is a crime in of itself, but also things as simple as restraining orders, right? Even if you haven't committed a crime, if there's reason to believe that you are going to, somebody can file for a restraining order and put restrictions on where you can go and your freedom of movement, because there is, again, this threat, this likelihood that you may go forward and commit this crime in the future. This is the same thing with drug court. So most of the time, punishments are laid down once people are convicted of a drug offense, usually involves some kind of drug treatment. The reason is because, well, I guess we don't know for sure you're going to
get my windows to work.
But as part of the punishment here for you having done drugs in the past is treatment, because we can reasonably and statistically predict that you will be doing this in the future unless we can help you. And even if we do help you, you're likely going to do it again in the future, which is it's a sad reality. In this case, it's much closer to the situation that I laid out, because she was arrested with marijuana and a pistol, which in the state of Alabama is a crime. So it's not like she's being pre-punished. It's that she's being punished for the crime that she committed.
Well, but no, I mean, at least the articles I've read seem to imply that had she not been pregnant, or had that not been the case, if she just had been given the normal penalty that somebody caught with some marijuana and an unlicensed gun would have had, she would have gotten released way early. So she was being kept. She was being kept. Yeah, right, likely. And it seems as though she was being kept solely in order to prevent her from doing something in the future that would harm her fetus, not as a punishment for something she already did.
Well, there can be aggravating circumstances. So, for example, let's say she wasn't pregnant, but when the police arrested her, she was carrying marijuana and a pistol, and she had her 2-year-old kid in the backseat, right? Now, she's likely going to get charged with neglect of her child in that situation. But even if she wasn't, even if that was sort of read into her other charges, that would still make those charges more severe than if she didn't have the kid with her at all. So it doesn't surprise me that, and Alabama has statutory, obviously, the authority to do this from statutes, because they're doing it, right? They have the authority to punish people in certain aggravating circumstances. In this case, the aggravating circumstance is, hey, she was doing marijuana when she found out she was pregnant, and then 2 days afterwards, she still has marijuana on her and a gun. I mean, that's not a good situation for a pregnant person, or really anybody. Now, of course,
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do feel like 48 hours is not like that long of a period of time. Like, if she found out that she was pregnant, if I found out that I was pregnant, or other women who I know who may find out that they're pregnant, I don't feel like my first response would be like, oh my gosh, let me get rid of the weed that I have stashed somewhere. Like, I feel like there are other things that are going to take priority. So 48 hours seems like she very well could have forgot that it was in her vehicle. Like, I don't know. I just feel like you're clinging very hard on, like, she should have disposed of it as soon as she knew. And that just feels kind of like an unrealistic expectation.
It's possible that's very possible. And ultimately, like, when this does go to trial, if it does, it likely won't. But if it does go to trial, like, that'll be a question as to when determining the punishment, what her intention was with the drugs and the gun. The issue is that anybody caught with drugs and a gun is going to say that, oh, that's not mine, or, oh, I was just about to get rid of that. That's just the universal excuse every single time.
I wanted to try to refocus. That's part of where I wanted to go this, but like the point of the question is to test the limits of being pro-life or pro-choice. That's why I wrote in the way I did. So I'm gonna read that part again, the last part. If you are pro-life, shouldn't you be in favor of a law that restricts a woman from harming her fetus, as this one is? And if you're pro-choice, should the state ever have the right to interfere with a pregnant woman's choices, even if she uses hard drugs? And so some of you have already answered this question. Like Fanatic says, like, he's going to the drug.
And to answer that,
okay.
I guess to answer that
Sure.
question directly.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
Let me finish going this. All right. Yeah, so some of you have gone on that. So, like, I guess I'm testing the limits of bodily autonomy. So for people who are pro-life, right? Like, okay, so you think this law in principle is okay. But
Yes.
what if
Yeah.
we went a bit farther,
Yes.
right? And Al and I have already had that conversation. Al was referencing it previously, so I'll bring it back up again. If this woman, for instance, refused to eat, would you be in favor for a law something like this? Well, the baby is in danger. We gotta protect the baby because the mother is making a choice with her body. Would you be in favor of strapping her down for months at a time and force feeding her so to save the baby? Is that okay? And then on the other side,
Until the baby is viable to
and
live outside of its own. On
I
its
would
own.
say
and
that
on the
I
other,
would-
and the other side, I'm almost done. I just want to make sure we got all this so that other people can respond. But I want to hear from you. And if you're pro-choice, yeah, shouldn't say ever interfere. And so if the child, if the the mother is using a harder drug, right? Because I actually don't care about the marijuana, right? I care about the principle of the law. So for myself, I'm pro-choice, and I'm for the woman's bodily autonomy. So it's a challenge to myself, and I actually don't know where I stand on this. That if she's doing something that, like, it's no question, right? There's a question about marijuana here between everyone here. But there's no question that, like, doing meth while pregnant, right? It's pretty fucking shitty for your kid. But I also believe that you can terminate that child whenever you like. So what difference does it make if she damages the child as she's going along, right? So this is a challenge for myself as well. So if you're pro-choice, I really want you to focus on that. Are there limits to that woman's bodily autonomy, right? And on the other side, if you're pro-life, are there limits to
This is gonna be fun because I'm an evictionist.
Protect that fetus. All right, please.
Yeah. So when it comes to me and the intervention, I think it needs to be malicious or something. So I think like purposely smoking a drug while being pregnant is malicious. With fasting is different, but because not necessarily is gonna do harm to the baby because fasting is based. But so fasting is a weird one. But yeah, I think in principle, if you're doing something malicious, to the fetus, and then the state is intervening to say, I want to protect this life. Kind of okay with this kind of base.
Yeah.
This is a tricky kind of question that you've posed, and I'm glad that you did pose it. I think that obviously in this situation we should look at, is the woman wanting to carry the pregnancy to term, or does she want to have some sort of assistance in accessing abortion, accessing an abortion? Like, I think that should be clarified. If she is looking to carry it to term, then I think we have to look at drug addiction, substance abuse as a mental illness. And if it's to the point where a person is harming themselves, which she very well could be, then I do think that some intervention is warranted, in the same way that we have other practices in place where somebody is harming themselves or others.
He's asking you to connect it to the pregnancy though, right? You generally went to like harm to self. He's asking you specifically in the case of pregnancy.
So yeah, that clause is if you are a danger to yourself or others. So I think the or others could be activated in this if the woman has expressed that she is intending to carry this to term.
Oh, but you're pro.
So it's a human only if she wants it to be one?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if she's looking to seek out abortion access,
then it's not a human. But if she's not looking to seek out abortion, then she can harm it because she's harming others.
It seems like you're
there's no consistency
personhood,
there.
Depending on her choice, right?
Yeah.
So you're
This is
saying
why the rose standard is viability and not human status.
And but on another, I've heard other people make this argument in a different context, Genevieve, that you're talking about. And that, like, in terms of an attack, right? Or like an accident. So like, let's say if you are
trying to
driving
come to
a
her
car
rescue.
and some drunk driver hits you, right?
Yeah,
People wonder,
yeah.
okay, well, should that driver be charged for single homicide or a double homicide? And people are like, well, if she wanted to keep that child, well then, yeah, then double homicide. But if not, then a single homicide. So you haven't been the first person to make that argument. But yeah, people run into trouble, as Scott was trying to say. So you could try to address that. Then I want to go to Scott and then Lacto.
I definitely have heard that argument as well, and I don't think that there is a super easy answer. I think that there needs to allow for nuance, and I know that may sound like a cop-out in some people's minds, but I do think that circumstance and intent makes a difference in how we approach things from a legal and moral standpoint.
Thank you. And let's go to Scott and then Lactoid, please.
Yeah, so I'm not pro-choice and I'm not pro-life. I think both of those are illogical positions. The fact of the matter is that, I mean, well, it's not actually illogical to be pro-life so long as you don't believe in body autonomy or freedom of individuals, so long as you believe that the government has a right to own portions of your body. So I'm an evictionist, right? I believe that it is the right of any woman to be able to evict a child and abandon said child at any point in time during her pregnancy, regardless of whether or not the child is viable, even if it leads to death. It is an unwanted trespasser in the body. However, the child does not have the positive right to your body. That being said, you do not have a right to harm the child, which means an abortion, for example, or like a late-term abortion where, you take a child's body and then you put a pick to the back of the central nervous system and you brain it and then you pull it out clump by clump and then vacuum the rest out. I don't think you have a right to do that either. You have a right to perform a procedure to evict the child. If the technology is capable of incubating the child to the best of your ability, you can do so. And if it's later in the pregnancy, then that's perfectly fine. You give up rights to that child. So in this situation, what I would say is if you, no,
I just want you to clarify.
Go ahead.
You said you were for eviction at any point, and then you go to say like late-term abortions are dangerous, so we shouldn't have it. What's your actual position?
I think you're talking
That's
about
my
technology
position.
that doesn't exist yet, right? You're referring to. Like,
I'm saying that you have a right to pull anything out, but as technology increases, eventually that viability is just a medical term that means 50% likelihood to survive, which is currently at around 24 weeks. But like obviously technology will change in such a capacity.
I'm not asking you about viability. You said you were ejectionist. You said that I believe that a pregnant woman, evictionist, and at any point she should be able to terminate that pregnancy. Abortion is a way to terminate that pregnancy.
No, I don't believe in the termination of pregnancy. I believe in the ability to evict a fetus and or a baby.
What am I?
That means it is an unwanted trespasser. If the woman does not want it, she can take it out of her body. What she can't do is cause intentional harm to. I believe that you can evict, let's say, a person in your house into a blizzard, even if that blizzard kills them. You don't have to keep someone in your house.
He's talking around it. He just means you can evict it, but you can't kill it. Meaning you can get rid of it only when it's viable, but you can't kill the baby, like just for the purpose of just like getting rid of it.
He believes you can remove the baby and let it die, and then that's how he thinks abortion should exist. Is just remove the baby and let it die.
Even more than dead. All right.
Yeah. So okay. So this is almost.
But to this
the Rose
point,
standard.
I'm sorry. I got a bunch of interrogation. I got a bunch of interrogation about it. Let me just finish.
So
in
Scott,
terms of this,
Lactoid, and Ico.
So in terms of this situation with a pregnant person that is doing drugs, if they want to evict, they should be allowed to evict. But if they're going to continue to do damage to the other body by in vivo, usage of any form of drug that we know does permanent harm to the child, right? That is a rights violation. So they either need to choose to evict or they need to be kidnapped in some capacity until the baby can be safely evicted.
Can I ask you a question? How would you safely evict 8-month-old pregnant woman? How would she?
Oh, eight months easy. You can get a C-section and pull out an 8-month pregnancy easy, and they're perfectly fine in NICU. What's that?
3 months. So 3 months.
Child might die.
No, but like, I give up. I'm lost.
So hold on.
There's no reason to be lost. He basically is saying it's okay if you abort the kid in those circumstances because technically that's what you're doing. We know with like 100% certainty it's that the child might die. The child will die. If you evict a 2-month-old baby, it's going to die. He just doesn't want to call it an abortion so that he can try to maintain this like whatever phrase that he's using of eviction so then he can say I'm not aborting, I'm just evicting. But literally he knows without a shadow of a doubt the child will die at 2 months, but you do have the right to evict the child.
Okay, hold on, Scott. Let me try before you react. So let me try to get that distinction so that we can like move past this. Okay. So if there was a future technology, right? If there's a future technology, I think GSU, we've discussed this technology before, right?
Yes.
A future technology to safely remove the fetus at any point in time, right? Or whatever it's called at any point in time. That's what you'll be calling an eviction,
Artificial
right?
wombs.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It would be illegal to abort, but it would be perfectly legal. So the point is that the child has a right to their body. You must maintain the intact nature of the body. You do not have a right to cut up or dismember the baby. Now, if that causes, like, let's say a 20% chance of death or something, or you don't want a C-section, too fucking bad. You don't get to use an abortion procedure to intentionally.
Yeah. So what he's just saying is that, like,
I just want to ask a plain question. So would you say in a world where this technology is there, you would be pro-life?
I mean, no, I would still be an evictionist. But I mean, there would be it would be a difference without a distinction, right? It would be a difference without a distinction because, like, you could but there might be still some pro-life people that say you're not allowed to evict because there's like a 10% chance of dying or something like that.
Or the sacredness of the womb. Yeah.
No. You're saying that you arrive at being pro-choice due to different reasoning, but you'd still be pro-choice.
That's not what I'm saying at all, and I've made several distinct differences between these.
No. He's saying that it would be effective. Like, the distinction would not matter, right?
GSU Gambit, I had an interview with Dr. Walter Block that invented evictionism. So if you want to get into, like, the nitty gritty stuff about it, I'll send it to you.
Let's go to Lactoid and then Iko. I've been waiting quite patiently.
Oh, and then me.
Okay, three quick points. Scott, I know we've spoken about evictionism a little bit. I have some issues with it. One of the issues that I just want to present that people can think about is I think that evictionism doesn't really make sense when you are the one responsible for putting the person in the situation in which they have to be evicted in the first place. So, like, for example, like if I put a child in my car and then I'm driving on the highway and then I say, oh, you're evicted, and I throw the child out of the car, I mean, this is not eviction. You're setting up the circumstances now where you know that death will come to this child, and you are the one who put this child in the situation where they now have to die for you to evict them. So that's my problem.
False. No, that's false because the child doesn't.
Let Lactoid get his point across. He's been waiting for a long time.
Right, and then there's like a question as to, well, the child didn't exist before. Well, is there some kind of contract that comes when, like, you intentionally create the child? You know, I think there is, or there could be. It's a very complex issue, but that's just one objection to the evictionist standpoint. I want to answer Prime's question, which is, you know, what would the standard be? Like, I guess the bullet that you wanted people to bite is.
You're hearing that static again. I don't know who it is.
I'm hearing it too.
Yeah, someone mute. Everyone mute or something, because we're hearing static. Lactoid, please.
Okay, I still hear it. Hold up, I can.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody's mic moving.
Yeah, I know. It's really annoying, but it's someone. If everyone.
I'll just keep going. And unless we have to stop and figure it out. Yeah, because that is kind of irritating.
So it's got to be Lactoid. Everybody else was muted except you.
I can mute right now.
Mute.
Fuck, I can't. Hold on.
We're all fucking muted.
Yeah. Wait, now we can't hear Prime. Oh, is he muted? Yeah, he's muted.
Hey, it stopped.
So it's Prime. We can't hear him.
Prime?
Yeah, we can't hear you, Prime. I don't know if he knows.
Prime, you're still muted on Discord.
He said, "Oh fuck."
I muted myself in multiple places. Sorry. But like I was saying that we muted ourselves all, and then we still had it. So I don't know what's going on. It's really fucking annoying. All right, so we're just gonna have to push past that. Please, Lactoid.
It's the CIA.
Okay. So to answer your question, right? When you say like what should the limit be? I think my philosophy here is that it should likely be connected to, you know, what if you did this to a child, would it be illegal, right? So, you know, in the situation of, are you starving your child? You know, would there be some kind of situation there where, no, you have to feed your child? I think I would have that standard. I would also illegalize drug use for pregnant women, including alcohol. I think because feeding your a born child drugs and alcohol is a non-consensual aggression on that child. The child can't consent to, you know, in having those substances in their body. This obviously causes damage. And we really can't argue here with the statistical reality that drug babies and alcohol babies have a much more difficult time in life, much more likely to be poor, have intelligence issues, and are more likely to commit crime. There's a massive societal cost with this and a major threat in terms of the higher crime rate to law-abiding citizens. I think all that really needs to be taken into account here when we're designing policy. And one last thing I want to say on this, because this is actually a debate that I've gotten into with people in real life, outside of the debate sphere, and the level of misinformation out here about what's harmful in vitro is really fucked. So I've seen so many people say, no, well, just 1 or 2 drinks is totally fine when you're pregnant. No, I just have a glass of wine a week. Anybody who says that is not informed as to reality. Every government agency specifically says there is no safe amount of alcohol, right? It's not 1 glass of wine a week is not good for you. Okay, I just need to make that clear, because it's very frustrating to talk to people who I think try to justify their addictions, as addicts often do, but just blatantly lie about the reality.
Okay.
So you're saying
two
the
things.
studies that say that a glass of wine a
that's
night.
just
One
responding.
second, Genevieve, you said you wanted.
Can I just respond to what he said to me?
Oh my God, hold
I
on.
just really quickly have to excuse myself. I apologize. At the top of the hour here, I do have a commitment that I have to run to, and so I apologize to miss out on the past 30 minutes, but I want to bow out, and I just wanted to say that before disappearing. Prime, I really appreciate you having me on the panel, as always, and this was a really great topic. I think it led to some good conversations. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Let's go to Aiko, who's been waiting, and then we'll get to the rest of you, motherfucker, and Niall, and then we'll get the rest of you guys. Aiko.
So I just wanted to point out that when I listened to Fabian's argument about evictionism, this is, except for the reason it's not exactly the same is because Fabian lives in this world of deep theory. But this is essentially the argument that was made for Roe and what became the Roe standard ever since, which is the point of viability is what matters. Now they're talking about in the aggregate, right? So there are individual instances where a fetus might survive, whereas the Roe standard wouldn't predict that it would, which is before 24 weeks. But it makes the Supreme Court made the same reasoning that Fabian makes, but then takes an extra step and says, okay, because we consider that a thought experiment, we can now say that viability takes place in the 24th week, and after 24 weeks, then states can decide, and before 24 weeks, the right to abortion, remains a right or becomes a right, or however they framed it. And so I just wanted to say that what Fabian is describing is what we've been living under for ever since Roe for 50 years, and it's just that he's just not taking that extra step that the court made. That was it. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Let's get to Isle, then we'll get back to everyone else.
Yeah, I think that, evictionism sounds really seductive in this way, because, you can almost have your cake and eat it too, in a sense, because, you can decide that, life is precious, so, you want to preserve the life as best as you can, but also, woman has that right to choose how she wants to deal with the pregnancy in her own way after, deciding for herself, and maybe with the counsel of those closest around her and doctors attendant to her. So I think that, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And like I said, I think that this probably should be the way to deal with these types of issues, like we see in the dilemma we had before us with the woman who had marijuana. I think that she, unfortunately, was the exception that proves the rule, because she fell through the cracks, and that's very unfortunate and sad. But I think that, the law in itself is a good thing.
Okay.
Prime, we want your opinion. We want your opinion, bro.
My opinion? You guys want my opinion?
The pregnant women doing coke? You cool with that? Just say it.
No. So, okay. So I am for bodily autonomy, and I no problem saying that I put the woman's autonomy above the life of the child, right? The fetus or the baby. I don't call it what you call it. Some people like want me to say baby. That's fine, baby. I don't give a shit. I put her bodily autonomy above that person. But
So you're inconsistent.
So I'm inconsistent. That
Right. You believe in bodily autonomy. Just you believe that some people's bodily autonomy is more important than other people's.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever.
Sounds like
Fine.
I don't know. Like like what if we were in the 1800s?
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
well,
Yeah.
I believe in your bodily autonomy.
Well, sounds like slavery. Yes.
To defend Prime a little bit, Fabian. Wait 1 second. Wait 1 second. 1 second. It's literally just a little bit of an entrance. Fabian makes a little bit of entrance. No one cuts in on him. I appreciate it. All right, cool. So now, Fabian, if you're gonna call out Prime's inconsistency, you're inconsistent about reckless abandonment. If a mom would recklessly abandon her kid after it was born, 2 years old, you would say it's a bad thing, right?
You have to use the gentleness principle.
He probably wouldn't actually.
You have to use the gentleness principle. Yeah. So if you're going to abandon the child, you have to abandon the child at a place that you believe.
She abandons the child into certain death. She abandons the child into certain death.
She abandons the child in a place
into
with
certain
doctors
death.
and with other people.
Nope. She abandons the child into certain death. What's your thoughts?
Well, you're the guardian, you're relinquishing guardianship, and you follow the gentleness principle, and you do it into the safest place that is available.
But if
it's the same principle throughout.
If a mom abandons their child into certain death, what is your thoughts? Answer the question.
Well, it depends. Are you talking about in
so
this
you're
situation
inconsistent too? Got it. You're inconsistent too. You're just not willing to say it.
I literally said you can evict a person into a blizzard and let them die, and I have no issue with that. It's your property. I'm not inconsistent. You're just stupid, and you don't pay attention.
Inconsistent. You're fucking inconsistent as fuck, bro.
Where's the inconsistency?
Just finish. Just finish.
Yeah, let's please. Okay, so okay, so as I've said before, and I will say it again, in terms of abortion, right? I'm for aborting a child up to when that baby is crowning, right? Like that's how which I put
depraved you are.
Mothers. Yeah, depraved.
He wants to slit the throat of a baby.
So you can hold like a knife, like or a cheese grater, right up against it. That's crazy.
Yeah, literally, take a scalpel.
That's disturbing.
Take a scalpel and slit its throat. That's what he wants to do.
I want to hang him with this. Y'all let him say it. Let him say she can do coke pregnant. Go ahead, bro.
No. But that's the thing.
Saying
right?
something worse.
Because shut the fuck up. Holy shit. Shut up. Right? Like, let me just get this shit out. Then you can talk. You got a whole panel to talk. Shut the fuck up. Thank you. Any which way, GSU. So that's where I don't know. Right, like this is why I wrote this question, because I didn't know where I stood on this, right? So if I'm actually truly for her bodily autonomy, right, well then she should be able to do anything. I think people should be able to take their own lives if they want to, right? But it seems different. It just feels different. This is my own personal feeling that like you are doing drugs and you're like actively harming a child that you were, I guess, planning on delivering the baby, and then even if you're not, right? Like this just seems different. Like it would be like, what if you could somehow like torture a child inside, right? Like I don't know, it being exposed to cocaine feels like torture, but like yeah. But let's just say
maybe not cocaine. It's probably a lot of euphoria. Maybe meth.
All right, I'll leave it up to you drug addicts. But from inside the body, right? Like I don't like if she could do that, right? And it's like, oh, I was just planning to abort. Would I be okay with that? I don't think I would be okay with that. So like I don't know exactly where I stand on it, but it feels wrong to me to say just to use any old drugs, right? So I'll put that out there. But secondly, right, and it's where I really want to hit the other people who disagree with me, right? There are a lot of pro-life individuals here. Like, what are the limits for the state? Are you saying, right, for all of you, right, who are pro-life, let me know. Is it okay if a woman, because she doesn't want to have the baby, right? And she says, like, I'm going to go on a hunger strike. I don't have access to abortion care. I'm going to go on a hunger strike. Should the state be able to strap that woman down and force feed her? So that's what I want to get to. But okay.
Okay.
The answer is yes. Yeah, they should.
Wow.
They should be able to do it.
I feel
and
like
the reason is, I think when you look at it, like I think we do this already. When a person wants to kill themselves, then we like force them into institutions where they're going to be like given certain types of drugs and antidepressants or whatever, or antipsychotics or whatever the freak. I think when it comes to like we believe that people like parents have guardianship of their children, but in order to protect children, we'll restrict that guardianship from them. So like DCFS will literally come and rob your kids from you if they find out that you're being abusive to kids, even though they're your kids and you have the ultimate say so. The state can always act in interest of protecting its vulnerable citizens. And I would say that if you're a person that's like wanting to like I don't know, murder your baby, whatever the freak. Like, I feel like at that point, the baby is a vulnerable citizen. And I feel like if you're talking about going on a hunger strike because because you're forced to have a kid, I feel like at this point, not only would I think that we probably need to force you to have this kid, I think you probably have to be pretty psychotic at that point. That just carrying the child to term that you would be able to give up for adoption would make you want to go and hunger strike and murder the kid. To me seems like, yeah, you probably got some screws loose up there, and we as a state need to go ahead and come in and enforce it.
Or yeah, it has a rapist baby and you don't want to have that. Okay, Aiko, let's
No,
just
just to be clear, there are exceptions, obviously, for rape and incest, or in situations, for example, medical expediency. I'm sorry if the conversation we didn't actually address those things, but everybody knows
there are
these
states.
are common
No,
knowledge.
there are states that don't allow for that.
Yes, sure, there are states that don't.
And
Yeah,
even
you're right.
if you do, and even if you do allow for that, that doesn't mean that a person will actually get access to abortion care, right? So, like, if you have to,
That's a different argument. That's a different argument.
It is
Arguing
a
whether or
different
not they
argument.
can get
It
to it.
is
But
a
just to be
different
clear,
argument.
you obviously know everybody here. No, I didn't. I was bringing up the idea about. I'm sorry. You introduced the idea about a rape or an incest baby, which I know that you know is dishonest because everyone on this panel obviously believes that in the cases of everyone in this panel knows that in the cases of medical expediency, rape, and incest, that in all three of those things, that we are all for making sure that a person is able to terminate those babies, right? So then we all in this panel think this, and the vast majority of the states also think this, and we all disagree with the states that don't.
I think those exceptions tend to be bullshit any which way. They tend to be a fig leaf. But that is a separate conversation. I do want to focus on this one. I go ahead his hand up, then I'm going to go to Scott. Thank you.
Okay, so I just wanted to say first that Prime, there's a big difference between the whole abortion conversation and this particular case, because in this particular case, we're to assume that the mother is going to have the child, in which case there's going to be, like, no matter what you think about personhood, you certainly would agree that after birth, you're a person. And so you're going to have to live with the consequences of fetal alcohol syndrome or whatever else happens throughout the rest of your life. So there is a case to be made that a woman having an abortion should have more rights to do that than someone who's going to who is planning on having the baby and then letting that baby live its full life. Now that's, of course, I'm not saying that I agree with some of the claims that have been made on the science of what it would smoking marijuana once at the 6 week of pregnancy does. But I do think that it's distinguishable from the abortion conversation in that we know this is someone who's going to have to deal with this for the rest of their lives, and that person, as a human being, as a person who, as eventually an adult, is going to have a lot more rights than a fetus who would have. But also on this exceptions for rape and incest, that's never made any sense to me. Like, if I believed that abortion is murder, then making an exception for rape and incest to say that you should be able to murder somebody in those cases doesn't make any sense.
No, it does, and I'll explain why. So wait,
Sure.
does medical expediency make sense?
Yes, medical expediency does make sense.
So then you're understanding that saying by saying that medical expediency makes sense, then you're saying that there are exceptions in which we would value the life of the mother over the child, right? And I think that this is just an extension of that, because what you would be basically saying is that, hey, this child that's going to be born is the mother is going to be tortured, right? And a great deal of torture while she's pregnant with this child, because every single day it's going to be an ever-present reminder of what exactly happened to her, right? It's also going to be a re-traumatizing experience, right? And so then we we would say that the continual re-traumatization, remembering, reliving of one of the most, obviously, I think one of the most heinous things that can happen in humanity, right? The two that we typically talk about are murder and rape, right? The two most heinous things that you could possibly do, and to force someone to relive that daily for freaking 10 months, I think it's a little bit ridiculous, right? And so I think that's why we would end up making that exception. So they're not the same. It's not inconsistent at all.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I think that the logic that
the logic, just to give you the logic is through consensual sex, those babies should be protected. So when you bring up situations where it's non-consensual sex, then that's why it violates the principle.
So if it's consensual incest, for instance. I mean,
if it's consensual, wait. Are one of the people in this situation minors? Because I don't think there's consent. If these people are adults, then yeah, you gotta have baby. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
consenting adults, the baby should be delivered.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, well, only that. If you're gonna make consent the issue, then you're not making an argument about life or like that abortion is murder.
There is an argument for life. Wait, stop. There is an argument for life there. I think what you're missing is the fact that the severe trauma that you would be introducing to the mother, and the mother has the right to protect herself from that severe trauma, from waking up every day and just having to go through that experience over and over and over again. There's probably already PTSD, and that would only make the PTSD worse. And it would not be good for the baby. It would not be good for the mom. That would be good for literally nobody involved. So I don't know where you're trying to come at with this, but because people, even though we hold life to a high regard in the law, but even if you're protecting yourself, somebody else from not even death, but great bodily harm, you are allowed to kill the other person in defense of you or somebody else, or even in some states, your property from great bodily harm, not even death.
Right. So, but if you're talking about, because again, now we're assuming that this is a person, an innocent person, like who's separate from your own self, because that's the argument that gets you to that.
For sure.
And if you're making that argument, if you're going to say that, well, your trauma experience matters more than the life of that innocent person, then are there other examples where, in order to avoid trauma, you can cause the death of another innocent person, like an adult? Or is it only in the case of fetus?
You can kill a trespasser.
No, but that's somebody who's a threat to you.
But what if they don't know they're trespassing? What if they don't know they're trespassing?
So you're talking about killing someone
killing someone who is unknowingly on your property.
Yeah, you can't kill somebody for that.
Yes, you can. Yes,
legally,
you can. In Indiana, you can. You have the right. In Indiana, you can. You can kill someone for trespassing.
There are some states where that's the case, actually. Whether that's right or not, I don't know. But yeah, go ahead.
So let me just address a couple of these things. First of all, Lactoid, you said that a contract does exist with a being that doesn't exist, and then you immediately said, "Well, it could be," and then you said it could be. We could totally have a conversation later about implicit contracts.
We did, right? I'm thinking at moment of creation, right?
Yeah, you kind of self-owned in that regard. PrimeCayes, the reason it feels bad in this specific instance is because you're actively harming a child on purpose. Like, that's just what it is. Like, you can't actively damage a child and then say that, like, you care about bodily autonomy. The two contradict. You either care about bodily autonomy or you don't. You either care about rights violations or you don't. And so this is the same thing. This idea that there's an exception for rape because the mom will have some trauma and that this could lead to less outcomes is fucking an absurd argument.
That's not mine.
I'm not saying I didn't name anyone specifically. The thing is that it's either murder or wrong to violate the body of someone, or it's not. And I would say that you have the right to evict. You do not have the right to damage a body. You do not have the right to evict unless you are keeping the body intact and unless you are forestalling the guardianship and letting other people know that the right of guardianship is available to anyone and following the gentleness principle. That is the only way that is logically consistent throughout this whole thing, unless you are pro-life, but you are also fascistic and you believe that it is okay to own body autonomy over other people, and if you're arguing for that, then we have a whole nother conversation to have.
Lactoid?
A lot of things to talk about here. So,
also, real quick, medical expediency is an exception, right? Because that's an attack from one body to the another, and you have a priority of saving both lives. And if you can't, it's a triage situation.
Yeah, I have a huge problem. I actually have a real problem with the idea of, having to live that trauma every day is thus justification to end a life. Because the problem with this is twofold. Because the first issue is that this is an entirely subjective measurement, which is most pregnant women who give birth go through some level of like postpartum depression. PTSD, even in non-rape situations, isn't unheard of. And the same way, like, is there a lot more likelihood of PTSD potentially? But would we ever apply this to a born child, right? Like if I give birth to
no, we're not talking about PTSD. These are totally different things. Why would you even bring that up? How does that address anything that I said, Lactate?
Sproticus brought it up.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, right?
Yeah,
you said there's trauma that comes after like having to look at the baby every day.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry.
No,
I thought you were talking about postpartum. My bad. You know what? That's 100% on me. Go ahead.
I was talking about being pregnant.
So-
I wasn't talking about post-pregnancy. I was talking about being pregnant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what I'm saying. You brought up postpartum, and you did bring that up. I don't know why I second guessed myself. We weren't talking about postpartum, or we were talking about the actual trauma,
right?
That happens during the pregnancy.
Sure. So when you're
post-traumatic would be post-rape.
Right. So when you're talking about like why PTSD is thus justification to end the life, what I assume here, if we're like looking at what the issues we have with PTSD, is that there's some level of suffering that comes after you give birth to the child, some form of like mental suffering.
No, I'm sorry. I stated it very clearly, and I'll say it one more time. Every single day that person is pregnant is an ever-present reminder daily of the most vile thing that person experienced. So now we're attaching that pregnancy to the rape, not just I'm sad or my hormones are off, or you know how women get pregnant over nothing when they have kids, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about the ever-present reminder I am pregnant by a rapist, which is going to cause someone to relive, re-traumatize, revisit, remember that rape. That's what we're talking about every single day. And we consider rape to be one of the most heinous and vile things that any human being can ever experience. That's why we're saying that.
Yeah.
But the baby didn't rape anybody.
So ultimately,
what the fuck are you talking about?
I'm not talking to you, Fabian. I'm talking to people with brains. Get out.
Ultimately, it boils down to the trauma. That's what I'm talking about here. Your concern with this is that after birth, like reliving.
No. Okay, no. I never said after birth. I said a billion times. I'll say it one last time. Every day of the pregnancy. That's what I said.
And after. When you're saying
I don't care about after. I'm not talking about after.
Why
I'm not talking about after.
Why do you not care?
Argument,
Why do you not care? Why don't you care?
I'll say it one last time.
Yeah, explain why don't you care? Why don't you care after? Why don't you care after? Why don't you care after? Why don't you? Why don't you? Why don't you? Why don't you?
Okay.
Why?
Okay. Shut up.
Why don't you?
Whoa. Everyone, shut up. Whoa. Hey, shut up. Thank you. Fuck. Got it.
Crazy.
Lactoid, finish up your point, please.
And address what I actually said and nothing else. Wonder why you're not talking to me.
Great, I'm not talking to you. So
okay,
everyone else who was here, right? So you have to ask yourself, why is it just during the pregnancy and not after the pregnancy, right? That's the question that I want to have answered here. Now, I think Aiko brings up a great point.
Because you can put the kid up for adoption. Adoption's a thing, right?
Sure. Okay. So, what about? Would you be in favor of abortion if aborting a rape baby post viability? Because then you could just remove the baby and put it up for adoption, right?
Yes, I would be against it.
Okay.
I would be against it post viability. At that point, the baby gets the right to try to live.
Okay.
I'd be for it for the record.
So if I am let's say you have a 2-year-old child or something, who is a constant reminder to a woman of like some rape or whatever, and due to circumstances out of her control, she can't put up the kid for adoption. She cannot get rid of the kid. The kid's living in the house. There's like some kind of family obligation there.
Ward. The state
Okay.
will take care of your
We're
kid.
never
Drop
gonna
drop
be
the
okay
drop the
with-
kid
Alright.
out, drop the kid off at a firehouse.
Okay.
There's no questions asked.
okay.
Well, that's all. The
I-
answer is we're not going to be okay with whatever you're about to concoct. For sure.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess I understand what this point is. I just, for me, I don't think that the presence of an innocent person causing trauma to somebody else justifies violence upon that innocent person. Even if, because it almost appears to me to like, you existing brings me pain. You existing, even though you haven't done anything, even though you're innocent, by virtue of the fact that you exist, you're causing me trauma. So I'm gonna commit violence upon you. That just seems so counterintuitive and just so against the principles of established justice that I just don't accept it.
On the
Aiko,
pro-choice,
It
Yeah, go
doesn't
ahead.
seem
I-
counterintuitive to anyone with a working brain,
Sure,
because
sure.
everyone with a working brain
Yep.
can recognize that there is an association. Again,
I said I wasn't
drew-
talking to you. Didn't I?
drew
Didn't I
pretty
say
clearly.
that?
I know, I got you. But I'm just saying, for everyone with the working brain, just to interrupt whatever stupid thing that you were saying, it does make a lot of sense, because again, I drew an obvious parallel of the pregnancy and the rape. Right? And so that's where the thing is, where it's like, it doesn't seem very intuitive that this innocent person could be responsible for this trauma. But this innocent person can only come through via pregnancy. And that pregnancy is obviously immediately causally linked to a rape. So if there's a causal link between a rape, then it seems justified to any person with a working brain, and I get it, Lactaid, you don't have one of those, it seems justified that you would be able to say, well then if that's the case, then this is going to be an ever-present reminder daily, every single day of that pregnancy, that you are that this trauma that you experience was heinous, it's disgusting, and it's going to re-traumatize and relive that. Everyone with a working brain can see that.
This is
Okay.
what happens. This is what happens.
I'm
when-
not done yet. Okay, I obviously can't fucking stop Fanatic because he's gonna just do his shit, but he's done now. So Aiko, the second point that I wanted to agree with you on is I think you bring up a good point about the incest problem, right? If it's consensual incest, I agree that shouldn't be an exception. There's no reason why that's different than any other consensual sex, as long as it's between adults. If it's between a minor and an adult, or between minors, it's no longer consensual sex, because obviously
You're saying
minors do
what?
not consent to sex.
You're saying the
Yeah,
same
so
thing.
hold on.
You're
But
saying that, hold on, wait. You were just talking about how you feel like babies that are raped should have to be character turned regardless of what happens with the mother, right? Now you're saying that in incest, which what it is rape, right? It's statutory rape or whatever kind of rape you want to call it. It's rape. And now you're saying in the case of this kind of rape, it's okay. But in the case of like force rape between two adults, it's not okay. Can you?
No, what I'm saying is there should be no exception for incest. And
you were saying
and yeah, there should be no exception for
When a
incest.
girl gets
And-
raped
and-
by her uncle, she should be forced to carry the baby to term.
So the only exception that I think probably should exist is for rape, but not for the reasons espoused here. I think that there is an argument there, actually, under evictionism. My only problem with evictionism that I listed was if you put somebody in a situation now where you have to now kill them to get them out of it, I think you do have some kind of responsibility.
Yeah,
there.
hold on, wait.
If you get raped, you didn't put that person in that place.
I just want to see where we agree and where we don't agree. So, are you saying that in cases of rape, it's okay to have an abortion? You just don't like the way that
yeah.
Fanatic said.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Right,
But
cool.
not for incest. But not for incest.
Hold on, wait.
There's no exception. No exception for incest.
Okay.
What about a
no,
minor?
No exception for consensual incest.
For consensual incest.
Yeah,
If it's a
of
minor,
course,
if it's a
yeah,
minor,
yeah.
it's rape. It's no
Yeah,
longer consensual.
Exactly.
So obviously
yeah.
that falls.
Everybody feels that way.
And then two things, and minor things, I guess, because a little bit sidetracked. Indiana, they have castle doctrine. You can't just shoot somebody for walking on your land. It's against the law.
Not in Indiana.
Yes, in Indiana. Like
No, if you've got the correct
Motherfucker, I have a
signage up,
degree
if
in this
someone is
shit.
intruding
I
on your
know
land,
this.
if so, okay, so you want to explain stand your ground law, Ben? You want to explain that in Indiana?
stand your ground doesn't
the
apply to
statute?
people over on your trespassing on your property. Stand your ground happens
You
when
are
people
just
coming at
you are just literally wrong. You don't live in Indiana. You don't understand Indiana laws, and you are just literally wrong on this
Okay.
one.
I encourage everybody in Indiana to actually look
I
up
do
an
encourage.
attorney.
I
and
encourage
speak with an
everyone to look
attorney
up the law
before
and
you
speak with an attorney.
commit a
Yes, but
crime.
you are going
This
to
is
understand
misinformation.
that
This is
if you
unauthorized practice of law is a crime.
if
Did you
you
know that?
fear violence and someone is on your land, you are allowed to use lethal force.
So the other thing I really want to hammer.
Story is
Okay,
to,
cool.
Yeah,
No
are you
disregarding of that. Okay.
Shoot first and ask questions later, right? Like consult your lawyer after shooting. I
Oh
think is what
my
Lactoid is trying to
God.
tell us. But Lactoid,
Ah.
finish your point. Then we gotta go to Ico, who's got his hand.
Yeah, very last thing, and another piece of disinformation from Sprout.
Oh yeah, good.
He
Come
said
on in.
he said quietly, but I really want to like make this known because misinformation can be dangerous, right? When I said, hey, don't drink wine when you're pregnant, he said, what about the studies that show that it's okay? I'm just gonna read one sentence.
I was saying, I
VOD?
didn't get to finish what I was actually saying there. I actually got interrupted by Prime for someone else to talk. So if you actually want to listen to what I was actually saying, then you can ask what I was saying. If you'd like to go off the little piece you heard before I got interrupted, okay, cool. Are you saying that the studies that have proven that red wine is good for the heart, disregarding the alcohol or not, that red wine, even non-alcoholic red wine, is good for the heart? Are you disregarding those studies?
Good for the heart.
Non-alcoholic red wine has been proven to be good for your heart. Yes. It lowers the chance of you getting having a heart attack. It lowers the chance of you.
Wait.
Sorry?
Sprout, you said non-alcoholic, but he's talking about
I
alcohol.
said even non-alcoholic red wine.
That's
Right?
not you said wine initially.
I understand that, but wine can be non-alcoholic, can it not?
Oh my fucking God.
Yeah, he's referring to grape
Yeah,
juice.
okay.
No one's
hey,
arguing
Can it
against
not?
non-alcoholic wine.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I'm
literally
asking,
discussion
but
about
they're
fetal
both of these
alcohol
both of these are true.
so fucking
Both
stupid.
of these
Fetal
are
grape
true.
syndrome.
Factoid, both of
Ooh, a
these
little
are
bit
true,
of
and you know it.
alternative
Both of these are
facts.
true at the
Okay.
same time. Both alcoholic red wine and non-alcoholic red wine had the same health benefits for your heart. Are you disregarding that?
Yeah,
But are
listen,
those-
you
are
are
those
way
health
out of
benefits
your
bad
fucking
for the
depth.
fetus?
Okay, it's literally about the fetus. We're talking about fetal alcohol syndrome.
I was
the first
asking
sentence
you
of
a
the
question.
No, shut up. The first sentence of the
No,
CDC
shut up.
website. Yeah, the first sentence of the CDC website.
I'm waiting. No, shut up.
There is no known safe amount of alcohol used during pregnancy or while trying to get pregnant. There is also no safe time for alcohol use during pregnancy. All types of alcohol are equally harmful, including all wines and beer. Do not drink while you're pregnant. Don't listen to this fucking idiot.
Drink
Do not drink while you're
non-alcoholic
pregnant. Your kids are gonna come out
Drink
fucked up.
non-alcoholic.
Don't do it.
Drink non-alcoholic. NA is fine.
Yeah, and don't take legal advice from him either. What the fuck?
Your kids are
Lactoid,
gonna
you know
come out.
nothing about Indiana. You know
your
nothing about
kids-
Indiana.
You know nothing
I
about
find that
anything.
hilarious.
Hold
Your
on, wait.
kids-
I just want to read something.
Progressive,
The Indiana.
all right? Like, don't let them do it. all right?
I just want to read one thing because I think Sprout was right.
Yeah, you know when it.
Yes! Fucking get it! Fucking
Read
get
it. Read it. You want me to link you to the CDC?
No, listen. It says
This is
under
such a shit
castle
show.
doctrine- Under castle doctrine, a home's resident does not have to articulate why they reasonably believed an intruder would have hurt them or another person in order to justify using deadly force. That's all I'm saying.
Right. So, but where does this apply? Where does the Castron Doctrine apply? Does it apply to just somebody walking over in your yard?
Said at your home.
Yeah, in your home, right?
Your home extends to your property in Indiana. You don't believe it? Look it up.
Yeah. What
If
are you
you
saying?
if you shoot a fucking Girl
You have a
Scout
front
coming up your
yard.
if you shoot a Girl Scout coming up your driveway, you are going to go to jail. Okay, don't do it.
That's fucking dangerous, though.
Fucking,
I don't know,
this
man.
is so stupid.
Okay, hey, that's perfect. That's perfect. That's perfect.
Up your
That's perfect.
driveway.
Lactoid, you got it. You got it. You won. It's that simple. So let's just ask this really quick. Hold on.
Browdicus,
Yes.
can a person shoot a Girl Scout walking up their lawn or walking up their thing to go knock on their door?
No, that's not trespassing. That wouldn't be considered trespassing by the police.
What's the difference then?
Trespassing is illegally going onto property that is not available to the public. So if you're
Okay.
entering property that's not available to the public, that is considered trespassing.
So then stepping on a lawn would never be trespassing. Then,
Stepping
right?
on your front lawn to get to the front door would not be considered trespassing. You have to have signage up, and sometimes that can just be a paint on a tree, and that signifies it's a no trespassing zone. But if you have to have signage up, but if someone is on your property and trespassing, which you have to have the no trespassing stuff for it to realistically be that, then you have the right to use lethal force.
Okay, Lactoid, you got it. There it is. So he had to walk a half of it back. You're right, obviously, because clearly, originally he had made the stupid statement of just walking on someone's lawn, which is what you said multiple times, and he kept on trying to argue against you. You're right. You can't just walk on someone's lawn. That's retarded. And now we just move on. Okay, he updated himself.
Okay, great. Fuck. So
Freaking idiot.
this conversation did not go where exactly I wanted it to go. Aiko, do you have something else to say?
I guess we left this part behind a while back, but I just wanted to say on Sprouticus's point about the difference between a fetus and like a post-birth person or whatever. You have to recognize it, in order for there to be a difference there, you have to recognize the right of bodily integrity to begin with. So the logic that would take you to the point where you would make exceptions for rape and those sorts of things is the same sort of logic that acknowledges the bodily integrity argument to begin with. That's all I wanted to point out.
Yes, I place more emphasis on the mother's life than I do the infant's life, but I do not place zero emphasis on the infant's life. I've always said that I'm typically against abortion outside of my 5 exemptions, and then once technology reaches a certain point to where we can have artificial wombs, and then I would be against abortion completely, because those babies can live externally to the mother and live a happy life that way. So no, I've consistently argued that, but I place more emphasis on the mother's life than I do the infant's life.
Thou shalt not murder.
Okay, so this
Come on, dude.
this conversation did not
You're pro-murder, Christian.
go-
What the fuck is this?
go.
I'm pro-murder.
Go.
Bro,
it
you're
did
literally
not
the same
go-
exact shit. Shut the
It
fuck up.
did not go the way I wanted it to go. Okay, all right. The questions
not a
I
Where
Christian.
did you want it to go?
I get a call. Shut up, and maybe you'll find out. I'm literally talking here. Like, why? Why do you have to feel like talking when I'm talking? Okay, thank you. I was literally just about to say so. Where I wanted to go with it. Okay, so I really want to go onto this. Go into the point of like a focus on the bodily autonomy and the state imposing itself, right? I really want to focus on that, but that seemed to be a side question for you guys all. You guys move past it, and look, it
The
happens.
pro-life
But
people answered it.
I-
All of us.
yeah, but I heard you answer it, but I wanted to challenge you. I wanted to like focus in on this question. But you did. You're correct. You did answer it. But like we went all over the world. But it happens on a panel. It just is what it is. However, I would hope that a few of you would stick around afterwards, the open panel, so we could talk about it. All right, like Gambit, I would love to have you there. Fanatic, right? You called me a degenerate or degenerate, something like that, right? Then I'd love to hear more from you, right? More of you calling me names. And anyone else, of course, is also welcome. But I just want to like focus more on that, and I'll answer more questions. But my position on the other side, the pro-choice, I have no problem doing that. But I'm conflicted on it. I'm just trying to find my way here. Okay, so we are going to continue on with open walk-on panel right after this. But first, we're going to give an outro to all these individual people. So we still have more content. No need to leave. Stick around. More explosive moments, I'm sure, are to come. So stick around for us. We'd love to have you. All right. And also, Expatriate Social and Chat, right? Hit that follow button on my channel if you haven't done so yet. Hit that follow button, make sure notifications on, so you know I'm going live. It is all the time that we should miss out. And we have, of course, Twitter, Discord, TikTok, YouTube. Like, comment, and subscribe. So helps the channel. I'll tell when you do so. Support what we're trying to do. Okay, I am going to give an outro to these fine individuals, but again, content does not end. Just wait a moment. Start with Fanatic, who again has called me a fucking degenerate. And not for the first time. I'm pretty sure it's not the first time he's done that.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I have called you more than that, more than this time. I mean, when I realized, that you were into docking or whatever, and that's when I, like, at that point, that's from that point, you'll always be a degenerate in my eyes. But yeah, listen, twitch.tv/MrFanatic is where you can find me. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like debating. There's some people I genuinely don't like to debate because they're just not actually engaging with you or what you said. I think a perfect example of that is Lactate here, when I'm like literally saying 1 billion times as clear and unequivocally as you possibly can. We're talking about during the pregnancy, but why not after? It's like, yeah, nigga, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing that. Or when I like tell someone 1 billion times, yo, find a single study to support you, and then your entire argument is your study doesn't control for this, and it's like, okay, yeah, we're not really having conversations. You just move on, and I've gotten much better at that. So I did stay kind of chill today.
Dismissing
not
every
chill,
time.
but I probably didn't engage in some of the
Dismissive
nonsense. And it
every single time anybody brings up a point he doesn't like and just says they're stupid.
Twitch
That's
TV
what a
said
good
it
woman in
was
your
fine.
life does. Okay.
You might be right. Maybe that's a skill that I'm having, that I'm developing from a relationship with a very, very, very intelligent woman that, I just learned.
Yeah, I wouldn't do this more than like once a week, but it's fun to come to the shit show.
I could try to join, maybe open after, depending on where the conversation goes. But I first have to make a call, and then we can see.
Okay, it's sexy time and Fanatic's house. Thank you, Fanatic. No, seriously. But no, seriously, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Yes, he's called me worse things than a degenerate in the past. Just put that on the record. And so is Scott, I think. But we appreciate them both, right? So Scott, thanks so much for coming through and being part of all this and getting as rowdy as usual.
So it's very obvious that PrimeCayes is a degenerate, right? And the way that we know this is that he made a panel of a bunch of people that he knew would be a shit show, but he brought on eye candy so that like we would all behave ourselves. But then after Genevieve left, like it just turned into a monstrous scream fest because the eye candy was gone. And it takes that degenerate mind to understand those subtle implications of psychology and what eye candy can do to make the stream a little bit more calm, and so I applaud you in setting up your panels this way, PrimeCayes. You can't control that things happen and somebody has to dip out, and of course the shit show follows. I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. I meme, I joke, I do a lot of philosophy and a lot of libertarian analysis, just like tonight, right? It's very obvious, right? It's not a very difficult concept, but it is a very difficult bullet for people to bite. You don't have a right to control other people's lives. And so what that means is that everyone has bodily autonomy. Everyone has the right of self-ownership. And that's true if you're a businessman trying to write a contractual agreement about labor so that you can get jobs done. And that's true if you're pregnant, for both your own body and for the body of the child has their own rights. And if you're not consistent in those things and instead you engage in consequentialist analysis of outcomes, it's always going to be that your subjective bias and what you choose to weigh versus another is going to kind of lead you in whatever area your predilections, degeneracy, or shit value system may lead, whether you're the hardcore Christians that want to create a more fascistic state, or whether or not you're the lefties that, just want to kill babies, apparently. Whatever that may be. But if you want to check me out, Fabian Liberty pretty much everywhere.
Who is Genevieve eye candy for?
The masses.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I don't like where this is going. Let's leave that alone. Okay, I was happy to have Genevieve here. Shout out to Genevieve for coming on. I brought her on because I know she is passionate about this particular topic. I tried to get more ladies on, just didn't work out. So it is what it is. And we ended up with this.
I love poking. I love poking the hornet's nest and saying something that just like makes them all so uncomfortable sometimes.
Lactoid. Okay, right. One of my favorite people here. Lactoid. You've been through a lot. You've been through an ordeal here, right? And I think I gotta call it. I think you've earned your citizenship. I think you can be a naturalized American. So I have the power to grant you that. Now, you don't know American law, so you wouldn't know. So I have the power to grant you that. So you're now naturalized. And let no one question that in the future. So thank you for being here, putting up all this bullshit.
Thank you so much, Prime. Sorry for getting angry. I just want it to be known that all that rage is constantly brewing inside me. But I pride myself on being able to withhold it. But sometimes, when there is an aggressive level of wrong, it just kind of brings the worst out in people, and I'm no exception to that. But I mean, ultimately, I think both subjects can be summed up in union's bad, Warren's plan bad, and don't drink while you're pregnant. Don't do drugs while you're pregnant. All the science says it's not good, so you shouldn't do it. If you liked what I had to say, you can find me on Anti-Communism United on Discord, Twitch, and Twitter. Come on, pop over by, and if you have any questions at all, any clarifications you want, feel free to shoot me a message. And thank you to everybody here.
All right,
who
I'll
spoke
be
to
right back,
me.
boys. I have to pee so bad.
Even if you're wrong, and even if you fucking piss me off and maybe weasel a little bit, it's okay. All is forgiven. Thank you.
Thank you so much, buddy. And again, Lacto is one of my favorite, and I definitely appreciate him coming on. And I appreciate your legal mind. So thanks so much. Let's go to our my man Sprouticus. Sprout, been a rough one as usual. But you still got a smile on your face at the end. And shout out to you for that. So Sprouticus, tell a little about yourself.
I'm the Sprouticus. You can find it Twitch and Twitter at the Sprouticus. I obviously enjoy debating. I find it fun. I must be crazy that way. But anyways, the whole don't drink when you're pregnant, I 100% agree. There's non-alcoholic drinks for you to thoroughly enjoy. And it contains the same health benefits as alcoholic red wine. For your heart. So, if you're going to go hang out with your friends and they're all drinking, grab yourself a non-alcoholic drink and be able to enjoy the night with them. So there's nothing against that. Nothing medically proven for sure against that. So no. But yeah, if you guys want to come find me, come see what I'm all about. Twitch.tv/thespraticus. Oh, and by the way, I am starting D&D on Wednesdays. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah, check it out. And in fact, I might actually want to check that out too. I played D&D one time in college and never again. And I'd actually be interested in doing it again, but I didn't really have the opportunity. But thank you so much, Sprout, because everyone go check him out. We have our friend Aiko here with us. Aiko, thank you for being the calmest person here. You are the calmest person.
Well, I just want to say, I didn't expect, out of the two topics that we have today, I didn't expect unions to be the more heated of the two topics. That one.
Sorry, guys, I wasn't trying. Oh shit, my bad.
Yeah. Anyway, that one surprised me a bit. Lactoid, I just sent you a DM through Discord. I thought you might be interested in.
Sure.
And anyway, if like I said, I'm not. I don't have anything to plug right now because I'm not streaming now. But if you want to follow this account, maybe you'll be able to catch me when I do start.
Yeah, I think you did.
Thank you so much. All right, Lex, we have my man GSU Gambit. Gambit, thanks for stopping by. Yeah, I think you were actually pretty coffee today too. I thought you'd get more heated than you did. But you kept it pretty cool, and shout out to you for that. But I like you one way or the other, even if you're being heated at me. So thanks, buddy.
Yes. Yeah, man. I mean, we've been in the Twitch sphere for a while, and like, I've seen a number of argue with like white nationalists that bring up things like 1350, and like we agree with the stats that they're presenting, but we don't agree with the narrative that black people are inferior to white people. So like a lot of times people have
Where are we going with this?
But we test the methodology to say, wait, how can you come away with such a bad faith conclusion? And usually like certain people, when they're in arguments, they provide links when you ask them for it. But I think certain people know that when they're engaging with somebody more intelligent, that their link probably doesn't justify that in the methodology. So they like weasel and like cry and shit like that and say, hey, I'm gonna mute you as if that shit matters on Twitch. But regardless of that, usually when Fanatic is talking to less intelligent people, he has great content. So you all should follow Fanatic. There's amazing content out there. Cool.
Okay, thank you, GSU, for being as magnanimous as you were. All right, let's go to Al. Al, thanks for stopping by once again, jumping in and giving your opinion. Al, what about it?
Hello. Me, PrimeCayes, and the PCNF community all share one thing in common, that being degeneracy. So, I'm just here. I mean, I don't stream or anything, but I just like getting on the panels so I can talk and debate because I find it fun as well. If I had something to plug, I guess my DeviantArt and my Pixiv. I'm not going to tell you where it is or how to find it. Just know it is out there to find. But I had fun. I really enjoyed my time here, and with the things, I think that it's good to be part of the union. But if you don't want to be part of the union, that's also fine. And if you're not part of the union, you shouldn't have to pay dues. But I don't think that you should receive like the super benefits of being in a union either. I think you're just being a coat hanger or rider on, trying to get a free ride. I think that's gross. That you shouldn't do that. And for the second topic, I think I've said it before. Unlike Prime, who wants to slit the throat of babies or take ice picks to their spinal columns as they're coming out, I want to preserve life as best as possible. And I think that makes me just built different. But I don't think that makes me built that better than Prime. I'm just built different than Prime. And that's where I want to leave it.
So lies, I want to put them directly into a wood chipper as they come out of the birth canal. All right. So thank you all so much.
When you say they, are you talking about Jewish people? Because I'm offended
now. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
How dare you?
Thanks. Every
Lactoid, as your lawyer, should be, advising you not to answer that.
Apparently, we're all lawyers. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm really that alone. But seriously, guys, thank you so much. And if you guys want to come through, I really want to have that conversation on like the state intervention, focusing on that and exploring those possibilities. So if you stop by another panel, that'd be great. Everyone here is welcome to join, but if not, that's okay. Thanks for your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion, my community. I know they appreciate it just as much as I do. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.